right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Hayward City Council. We are going to actually be having two meetings within this meeting tonight. We will start with a special Hayward Geologic Hazard Abatement District Board meeting, and that will be followed by the regular meeting of the City Council. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Oh, my gavel has disappeared again, but I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I would ask those of you who are here with us in person and everyone attending on Zoom or in other ways to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Good evening. And this is also for the Geologic Hazard Abatement District Board.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Andrews.
Present.
Member Lamnan.
Present.
Member Marquez.
Present.
Member Salinas.
Present.
Member Wahab.
Here.
Member Cermeño.
I am present.
Mayor and Chair Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open public comments, and this is for the GAD items only, the Geologic Hazard Abatement Board District. So I will ask if there is anyone either here in the council chambers or watching on one of the other ways we have who wants to make a public comment. And Madam City Clerk, do you want to explain how they can do that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll be happy to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I think you can all see that, at least individuals joining via Zoom. So the way to provide public comment is by any member who is joining via Zoom. If they wish to speak, they could use the raise hand icon to request to speak, and the mayor will call upon them. Individuals participating via teleconference wishing to speak could dial *9, and their names will be called. Or they'll be called by the last four digits of their phone number. In-person participants who are in the council chamber who wish to speak could scan the QR code, which is in the back of our council chamber. And once they scan the QR code, we will receive an email, and their names will be added to our database, and the mayor will announce speakers in the order online cards have been submitted. And I believe that is it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, I will just give one more chance for anyone who wishes to make a public comment on this Geologic Hazard Abatement District part of the meeting, on something not otherwise on the agenda. Seeing no one, and Madam City Clerk, you don't have notice of anyone wanting to speak. I'm going to close public comment, and we'll move on to the consent calendar, which is really the only actual item on our agenda, and that is to accept a petition for annexation of the Hayward SOMI development into the existing Hayward GAD, and accept the draft Hayward SOMI development plan of control. And I'll just, so that is the item. It is in our packet. Is there anyone on council who has a question or wants to pull this off the consent calendar? Mr. Harrell, did you want to make any comment about this item?
We are available for any questions, but this item is similar to what the GAD has done for the Ersted property in the annexation into the Hayward GAD as a condition of approval for the development. So we are following through for the condition of approval, but are available to answer any questions.
And I will say that the city manager and assistant city manager and I recently attended a groundbreaking for this particular development. But with that, and with not seeing that anyone has any questions, I'm going to call, and no members of the public wish to speak on this item. I think I can go ahead and ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'm happy to move the item, consent item number 1, Councilmember Marquez.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, the item has been moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Salinas. Madam City Clerk, wait a minute. Okay. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll be happy to do so. Member Andrews.
Just to confirm, it's seconded by Councilmember Salinas or Councilmember Wahab, because I heard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard Councilmember Salinas. Maybe he's in here. So sorry I didn't hear you, Councilmember Wahab, but,
Sorry.
Okay, just to confirm. Aye.
okay.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Member Marquez.
Aye.
Member Salinas.
Aye.
Member Wahab.
Yes.
Member Cermeño.
Yes.
Chair Halliday.
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes. So we have now expanded our GAD area. So thank you for that, and that brings us to the GAD manager's report. Mr. Harrell.
Just wanted to say, with the exceptional rains we had this last weekend, we've been out to check the reserve development, which is the GAD maintained portion of the Hayward GAD, and it performed well during this rains. So we're doing the preventive maintenance that we need to do, and hopefully it'll be a good, very good winter.
Well, that's good news. Anyone have any questions, either here or? Okay, then with that, do any of you GAD board members, my colleagues here, have any reports, referrals, or future agenda items to suggest? All right, with that, seeing none, we don't have any future meetings scheduled at this time, although I know we have an annual look. When do you expect that we will be having the GAD reconvene?
We will work with the GAD board schedule, so what you pass tonight will result in the mailing to the property owner for the SOMI development to have the actual hearing on annexation, and so that will be a minimum of 20 days after today's meeting, so we'll work that out with the city clerk to set that date. That's the next time you would hear from the GAD.
All right, thank you. I guess we'll hear from you or be back with you relatively soon. But thank you for joining us here in the chambers tonight. And so with that, we can now move on to the regular meeting of the City Council. And I will ask our city attorney, Mr. Lawson, to report on the closed session.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Council did convene in closed session at 5:30 today, pursuant to posted notice. And with all members present, the Council discussed the 3 matters listed on the closed session agenda as follows. 1, the Council met with its labor negotiating team to discuss bargaining with all units. The Council took no reportable action. 2, the Council discussed pending litigation, the case called Swain versus City of Hayward, and took no reportable action. And 3, the Council discussed property negotiations, to wit, the California Air National Guard site at the Hayward Executive Airport, and took no reportable action. And the closed session adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you, Mayor Halliday.
Thank you for that report. Seeing no questions from council on that, we will move on now to public comments. This is your opportunity to comment on any items that are not otherwise on our agenda this evening. I think we have one at least. And maybe, Madam City Clerk, you could just put that slide with the information up again for, in case anybody missed it or would like to. So this is it's an opportunity to comment on items not otherwise on our agenda, and I do believe we have one request there. And that, is that correct, Madam City Clerk?
I believe there is, one moment, please. Let me stop sharing. I believe there is.
I'm
yes, we
seeing
had-
Susan Galkey.
Correct.
Yes, okay. And I believe she's attending on Zoom, so,
All right, I'm going to go ahead and, okay. Go
Good
ahead.
evening, Mayor and council members. I just had a question, and you might not have the answer to that. This afternoon, the fire department was doing a drill near where I live, and they were using quite a bit of water in this drill. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
Oh, because it was flashing.
I
like
know,
there
I
was
don't know
no
what that
signal.
was, but we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, my question was that is the water that comes out of hydrants, is that recycled or non-potable water, or do you know?
So, did you want to, yeah, I realize, we don't usually answer questions in the middle of a public comment.
know.
So do you want to make a comment, and then we'll get, I think the city manager might be ready to comment on that.
Okay, yeah, my comment was that if possible, it would be nice, since we are supposedly still in a drought, if that water was otherwise recycled or non-potable water.
And yes, thank you for the comment, and I'll ask the city manager if she has a response on that.
Most of the water, as I understand it, in the fire hydrants is potable water and not recycled. We are working on the recycled water facility in the industrial area that will have distribution to a number of businesses for landscaping use. I don't know yet if that will be able to be used for fire prevention or fire protection purposes, but I can double check. I don't see our public works director.
At the very least, we can pass the comment on to the
Absolutely.
fire chief, who is, I don't think, with us right now. And it makes a good point that to the extent we can save potable water, we should be doing it. And if in terms of, being able to somehow change what happened. And Ms. Gelke, if you would like to perhaps send an email to us at the City Hall, to the mayor and city council, which is an easy thing to do from the website, we could possibly get back to you with more of an answer from the fire department too. But thank you for the comment. And with
Thank you.
that, seeing no other public comments, I'm going to close public.
Mayor, I have my hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Councilmember Wahab.
No worries. I just wanted to say two things. One, this weekend, Saturday, October 30th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., we do have the brand new event where we are welcoming Kirby. Kirby is basically our mobile library. So I did just genuinely wanted to tell folks that are interested to take a look at that. The ribbon cutting will be at Heritage Plaza, which is pretty much right across the street from City Hall. Part two, I kind of just wanted to give a heads up to our city manager. When we have our community / PD engagement events, specifically when they're reviewing things, or for example, the NAACP is meeting with them a couple weeks ago, for example, if we can give them a larger room in the city, preferably even the city council chambers where they can kind of sit a little bit further from each other. I know that was one of the requests, but there was potential meetings. So if we can just make sure that that is available to accommodate the amount of people and what they're trying to potentially see, and if they can all be in the same room together. So just giving you guys a heads up with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'm going to close public comments, seeing no other hands up at the moment. And we'll move to city manager comments, and perhaps you can address Councilmember Wahab's questions there.
Yeah, I just was curious. I didn't hear what group was attempting to meet in the building. Sorry, Councilmember Wahab.
Oh, Councilmember,
It's not specific to any particular group, but when they do meet, if they can meet in a larger room than the room that they have at the station, possibly even in council chambers where everybody can have a larger room and a larger screen potentially.
what particular group are you talking about meeting?
This example was specifically for the NAACP, but it's not necessarily pertinent just to one group, just in general, when we have large gatherings, if they can potentially meet there.
Yeah, we haven't yet reopened most of our conference rooms or meeting rooms to the public yet. So, but if we have any requests for groups that want to come in, we'll make sure to try and put them in a larger room to accommodate social distancing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick comments. Councilmember
We're going to,
Wahab-
yes, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
City manager comments.
Councilmember Wahab stole my thunder on introducing Kirby, who's coming this Saturday. So I won't make that announcement again, but please come down and join us at the Library Plaza. And then the second is also this Saturday. Apparently we're doing everything on Saturday this weekend. From 8 to 11 a.m. is the ever popular compost giveaway event, which will be happening at SkyWest Golf Course, which we'll hear about later this evening. So you can come anytime between 8 and 11 a.m. and receive up to 4 bags of organic certified compost free of charge. You just need to show proof of Hayward residency and fill out a waiver. And so that is happening this Saturday. And then lastly, we are introducing a new program to help support our local merchants post-COVID. And we're grateful for our federal American Rescue Plan Act funds that are helping to support this program. We will be introducing a new electronic gift card program that will support local businesses and actually help residents get more money for their shopping, dining, and gift-giving dollar. You can purchase the e-gift cards online, and so if you purchase a $40 gift card, you get a second gift card worth $10. 75 gets an extra bonus $25 or $20 card, and $100 plus comes with an extra $30 bonus card. And the city is funding the promotional bonus cards to encourage additional spending. This program can be found on the city's website, the Together for Hayward e-gift program. And so that we encourage folks to shop local this holiday season and to purchase gift cards. So those were my announcements this evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council about that? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to our action items, starting with our consent calendar, which this evening is items 1 through 8. Are there any council members who need to pull off? Councilmember Wahab?
I'm sorry, I'm not planning to pull anything off, but if there's no objections, I'll move the items.
Okay. Is there a second? All right. The consent calendar, items 1 through 8, have been moved by Councilmember Wahab, seconded by Councilmember Zermano. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll for the vote?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Zermano.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that motion carries with 7 aye votes. Okay, moving right along to, we have a couple of work session items this evening. The first, item number 9, is regarding an update on the SkyWest property, including a summary of community comments and review of the draft site plan. And we will hear from Public Works Director Ameri. Is he?
Yes.
Yes, and he is on
Yes, I am.
Zoom this evening? Okay, and we see other members of the staff. I see our airport director going up to the podium, so.
Thank you.
Yes, all right, to the dais, I mean. All right, so go ahead.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Mayor.
Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Just by way of introduction, SkyWest is a 126-acre property owned by Hayward Executive Airport The property was leased to Hayward Area Recreation Park District and operated for decades as a golf course. After the lease ended last September, Hart decided not to renew its lease. Airport Enterprise Fund has been maintaining the site since then. Staff have been working with a consultant to develop a concept plan for future development of the property. I'll turn it over to Doug McNeely, Airport Manager, to introduce the consultant and jointly present the item. Doug?
Thank you. Yes, as Alex mentioned, so we have been working diligently to look into redevelopment of the leasehold. A very important part of that process is the requesting and receiving of comments from the public about the future of the leasehold. As Alex mentioned, we have engaged with consultant Kimley Horn to manage our workshops and summarize the comments received from the public. They have experience managing other similar projects, as well as extensive knowledge of airport design, principles, and FAA regulations. I would now like to introduce Aaron Sheelan from Kimley Horn, who will present the report. Aaron?
Thank you, Doug. Hi, I'm Erin Sheelan, and tonight I just want to take you through the current stage of the project and where we're at and the public engagement, recapping what we've done to date. Briefly touch on the site constraints and considerations that went into the site concept, and then talk through the preliminary site concept that has been developed for this property. Excuse me a sec. So as you can see here from this slide, there are a lot of steps that need to take place before construction can even begin on the SkyWest property. And in that light blue box on the upper left-hand corner is where we're at today. It is a land use visioning exercise to see what is possible at the site. And we've also been referring to it as a site concept plan. The next stage is going and talking to the FAA, coordinating with them, making sure that we can obtain their concurrence on the plan, and then updating the airport's planning documents, also known as the Airport Layout Plan, the ALP. From there, the city is going to work to release a request for proposal, or RFP, with developers in the region. And then from there, we'll be working with the city, with the cities and the developers to do more research, looking at that due diligence that needs to happen on the site. As you'll see through this presentation, we do have some preliminary idea about the site concept, what are some of the constraints and considerations, but there's still a lot of questions that need to get answered. At that stage, a developer would actually submit an application to the city. So again, this is a land use visioning site concept. It is not a developer application at this stage. Nothing is final. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We've also heard a lot of questions and comments about the environmental approval process, both CEQA and NEPA. None of that has been completed to date. That's something that would get completed later on. And then the city would work through an entitlement process in order to issue building permits. And as part of that, they could work on a development agreement to put in some of the requests that we've been hearing from the council members and the community. And then once building permits are issued, at that point, construction can actually take place. So you can see it's a multi-layered process, and we're just at the beginning of it. So that initial stage, the site concept project process, we've looked at it kind of in 2 rounds of public engagement. Both of those rounds are complete at this stage. The first one, we just gathered initial public input in order to develop that draft site concept. What do the community and the council members want to see that site used for? And at the same time, doing that preliminary due diligence report to see what is the site constraints based on looking at it being an airport. Once that was complete, we developed a site concept in conjunction with the city and the airport, put it back out for public comment, received feedback, and made changes again. And then at this stage, we have revised it based on those comments and presenting it at City Council. And it will go back for approval on November 16th. So you can see here, in this map on the right-hand side, the airport is the yellow star right in the middle. And these are some of the areas that we did some direct outreach to you could see we mailed out 14,000 postcards to the residents, all areas of the airport, including San Lorenzo to the north of the airport and across the Nimitz Freeway. We also worked with the city and the airport to release information on the public meetings on social media, use the city's electronic distribution list, which had almost 80,000, the mask, 80,000 people on that list. We also reached out to the homeowners associations that are adjacent to the airport, including the city participating in some of their homeowners association meetings. We also created a public website for this project, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then we posted information making sure that all the public engagement was available on both the city and the airport websites. There we go. So again, public input opportunities. We've had several rounds, round 1 and 2. Now we're at the city council meetings, which have been open to the public as well. And throughout that entire process that we showed earlier in that original slide, there's going to be numerous times for more public outreach. So for the summary of engagement just through these first 2 rounds, in that first round we had 1 meeting, and we were very impressed as a project team, the amount of attendance that we had. We had 111 meeting attendees at that 1 meeting, and almost 140 questions and comments that came through. In round 2, we had 2 meetings that took place. There was 225 attendees between those 2 and over 150 questions and comments that came in during those meetings. So the comments that we received through the project website, and you can see on the right-hand side, the top is what we received through round 1. And those icons each indicate a certain type of activity that was requested, whether it was a passive or active recreation, development, biking trails, something related to the airport. So in all, for those 3 public meetings, we received over 700 comments. In addition to that outreach, we also talked to the Council Airport Committee and the Hayward Youth Commission as well, and received feedback from them. We heard a lot of themes through the public and council engagement that we thought were great, and we tried to incorporate them as much as we possibly could, knowing that the site constraints that exist today. We heard from recreational activities was a must, with themes of dog parks, community gardens, walking and bike paths, including connections to regional trails, and including disc golf. People really wanted to see improved connections between the parks that are existing, the San Lorenzo and the Kennedy Park. We also heard a request to maintain the open space that's there now with the current landscaping, including duck ponds and trees. People were also concerned about the security for the adjacent residents with any new development, and wanted to make sure that there was appropriate buffers or setbacks between any new uses, including aviation, and the existing residents. So briefly, just talking about the project background and the site constraints and considerations, you can see here in the red border what the site is located. It's on Hayward Executive Airport property within the city of Hayward. Sorry. So the project site is 126 acres, and as I noted, it's located on an airport property. It was previously operated by HARD as a golf course and open to the public. And as Alex mentioned earlier, HARD chose not to renew the lease due to financial hardships, not related to COVID. And we're very aware that it's provided recreational opportunities to local users, even as it's been a golf course or since it's been closed. And just noting, as I noted before in that long list of items that still need to take place, this is something that's going to take place over multiple years through a phased process. It's not expected to happen immediately or all at once. And being on airport property, it is subject to FAA approval in addition to the city council approval. And something that is very important to remember is that any new tenants will need to pay fair market value, which is higher than what HARD paid previously. So without going into a lot of technical details at this part of the meeting, I do want to highlight the general site constraints that we looked at. Being an airport, the site is subject to both the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, and the Caltrans Aviation Program. These are focused on land use regulations and, again, some of those financial requirements. We also looked at the airport funding and operational needs, making sure that the site constraints and the opportunities were balanced as running an airport as a business. We know there's many city documents that also need to be followed, including zoning, the climate action plan, and the general plan, and then really taking into consideration what the community has asked for and the council members. And I want to note that it's very important that the FAA and the Caltrans regulations are adhered to, because they are the ones that provide the majority of the capital funding for the airport. So specifically for the FAA, as they are our federal regulators for an airport, We want to look at airport safety zones. What are requirements for the airport? What must that land use? What can and can't be at those spots? Height hazards and obstructions, making sure that we're not providing or posing any dangers, or especially new dangers to the airport. That includes wildlife, and making sure that any noise compatibility is adhered to. We're not introducing new uses that are not compatible with aviation noise. There's also the fair market value requirement, making sure that the land is paid for by a new leasee at that higher cost for best use. And additionally, as I noted, they have to have final land use approval in addition to city council. So that'll be done as part of future coordination efforts. So with that, we're looking at the draft site concept. Again, reminding everyone that this is the first step of many, and the actual development project is expected to take place through a phased approach. And we mentioned before that once this has gone through city council at the November 16th meeting, I believe, it'll be taken to the FAA to update those planning documents, and then again, working with the city to release an RFP to the developer community, understanding their interest and what they are willing to provide, and then following the city's process to develop any new development, which will include more rounds of public outreach. So here is the draft site concept that the airport and the city would like to carry forward as a visioning exercise for the future redevelopment of the SkyWest property. In here, the illustration incorporates numerous suggestions and feedback that we've received from the community and the council, and includes uses required for aviation safety as well as economic impact. So specifically, we have 24 acres for parks and recreational use, 47 acres for business development, a trail connecting Kennedy Park to San Lorenzo Park, 13 to 14 acres for aeronautical development, which also includes a 200 to 320-foot buffer between the residents of the San Lorenzo Village and new aeronautical development, and 36 acres dedicated for protection to the airport safety areas. And again, this is not a final design nor a final development plan, as that will be taking place at later stages. So with that, I want to go through each individual area. So first, starting with those recreational developments, the areas in green on both the east and west side. Along the west side, you see about 8 acres for a pocket park, thinking that this could be an extension of the existing San Lorenzo Park. And on the other end, the eastern edge, we have a larger area that would provide uses for many different types, and as well as providing that buffer between 200 to 320 feet between the residents of both the SkyWest and San Lorenzo Homeowners Association. And this area would connect to the existing Kennedy Park. You will also see that in certain areas, there's a wide, or along the entire area, there's a wide multi-use trail that is meant to represent the existing walkway today. As future development takes place in certain sections, we could ask the developer to improve that landscaping to continue to provide the visual aesthetic that's there today. We heard a lot of different uses asked for, as I noted before, and the nice thing about what we heard is that many of those uses are very flexible. We did not hear a lot about asking for sports fields, and that's good because those require larger areas and much more specific layouts. So as we developed this and looked at this, you may not see precise recreational uses, but that doesn't mean they can't be implemented before or as we're working with developers. But we're really trying to look at what is possible in the site today within the existing constraints. And one thing we really wanted to highlight was that buffer that was requested throughout this project. You will look at the different variations of the site concept, and that buffer has increased in size. So along the one edge, you will see 200 foot. We have overlaid on here one of the baseball fields from San Lorenzo Park. You can see it's about just smaller than a baseball field. And then on the other side, we've actually overlaid the SkyWest townhomes, and you can see that it's the same width of those townhomes would be within that buffer area. So that's going to provide a pretty significant buffer as well as the significant amount of recreational area that can be used. So again, we've heard a lot from the community and the council members over those 700 comments in addition to just things that we have heard during the meetings. You can see that there's the 13 acres on the east and 8 acres on the west. We've also put into there a dog park, and we've also heard about bike and walking paths. And some great feedback that we heard was making sure along the bike and walking paths do interactive activity stations, put in connections where possible to other regional paths that are in the area, make better connections from the north to the south. And a lot of people asked for an airport viewing area as well. And when we look back to those site constraints, the ones that are applicable to the recreational area is really avoiding wildlife attractants. The trees, the ponds, food sources, which includes gardens. Making sure that the uses are compatible with aviation, which means in general, no residential, no education, no shopping areas or stadiums. And it's also important to remember what is the source for the funds to make any of those improvements, not only the capital improvement, but the long-term maintenance of it. And then again, who is going to be responsible for the long-term operation of those recreational amenities. And throughout all this entire process, the airport and the city have been coordinating with HARD. They talked to them at the very beginning, and they're going to continue coordinating now that there's a vision in place. And one thing that we did really want to highlight too is that throughout this process, once a developer is on board, some of these requests for the very specific recreational amenities can be made through the entitlement process. So some of those things that we've heard through that 40-acre development site, you could ask for bike access, walking trails, those connections, specific landscaping, or other improvements that might be adjacent to their development area. And one thing that we wanted to highlight too is a lot of the requests that we've heard are actually contained within the 2 existing parks on either side. We know that Kennedy Park is under construction at the moment, and San Lorenzo was looking to update a lot of their facilities. But what is there today and what is programmed? You see lots of fields, you see the dog park, places for people to gather, the duck ponds, lagoons, the park course with fitness stations, and playgrounds. And that is already 30 acres on that western side. And then again, 17 acres on the eastern side at Kennedy. I believe it's open soon, it's under construction, but should be opening soon. That has additional amenities, even beyond what we've heard asked for, but playgrounds, petting zoos, other areas for people to gather. And then looking at the future aeronautical use in blue, again, with that large buffer area between with that green recreational area, between that proposed use and the residents. And this area is going to be reserved for future aeronautical to ensure that the airport can meet its demand for infrastructure. And right now, the airport is looking at really planning for storage for individual pilots with structures similar to what's there today, just on the actual airport property, on the fence. And I would really want to highlight that this development is not correlated with an increase of aircraft activity or types of aircraft. That is not going to change due to this building of hangars. And as part of the airport's rules and regulations, tenants are not going to be allowed to conduct a commercial business from these hangars. It's really meant to just be for individual storage. And applicable site constraints from that list is looking at making sure that the airport can provide sufficient operations, as well as maintaining the considerations for the community, that noise buffer as well. Here are some example pictures of what that storage may look like. You can see that they are smaller, individual, very similar to what is there today. And they might also provide shade hangars, which again, smaller aircraft, possibly electric aircraft as well, as that is definitely a big trend happening in our region. And then next, moving to airport safety zones, that center area in yellow, it's approximately 36 acres. And this one is a key one, again, noting that the FAA and Caltrans are major funding sources for the airport. There is the requirement to keep this area clear of all objects, that includes trees and buildings, and avoiding gatherings of people. You can see in this picture below, this is Livermore Airport. You can see that it is clear of all uses minus the navigational equipment that's required for operation of the airport. We've heard a lot from the community about maintaining this area as open space with utilizing the existing landscaping and structures. And we're not allowed to have gatherings of people in the community within this area, so people are not going to be allowed to walk. Additionally, many of the trees have been falling down, so the city is continuing to work with the airport and HARD to maintain this space and making sure that what needs to be removed or trimmed is going to continue to be happening to meet the FAA standards. It's also additional benefit of that zone to be providing additional buffer off the ends of the runway as well. And then lastly, in orange, we have that future business center development. It's approximately 47 acres. Within that density that's allowed per the Caltrans safety areas, it's about 40 people per an acre. And then within this location, it's going to be an extension of the existing industrial park to the south of the airport. And this development's going to be oriented towards biotechnology, life sciences, and it's not going to financially benefit just the airport, but the city as well. We're going to see positive fiscal impacts from business license fees, property tax, and possibly sales tax, and would expect it to produce a significant number of jobs for skilled workers. And this is another item that we want to highlight, that the public is going to have the ability to say in the quality of the businesses and the development that takes place. You can ask as part of that for all those amenities that I mentioned earlier to make sure that there's improvements done, as well as recreation. And the applicable site constraints, again, to the community, making sure the community is benefiting from any development, that the area is avoiding wildlife attractants, that it's compatible of a use with aviation, receiving that fair market value, which is turning into economic development and airport funding. We did hear a lot of comments and questions about environmental related to the development site. And just a note, during this part of the process, we have not completed environmental analysis, but would expect that to be done at a later stage. And with that, I just want to make a note that what you've seen is one variation of a site concept to really help carry the vision of the airport forward, as well as the city. But we would expect that variations are going to continue to take place. We've already seen it just through this 3 to 4 month process. And it's really just highlighting what are the constraints and the compatible uses, as well as what the city we've heard from the community as well as council members to carry forward. And the RFP process, that is one of the next steps, is going to refine that. It's going to help give the city and the public information about what exactly the developers are willing to do, as well as highlight what the market feasibility is willing to carry for a site such as this. And again, there's lots of room for more input into this as it progresses along. Thank you very much for that time. That was a lot of information for you.
Thank you. And yes, that was a lot of information, and I know some of us had gotten it earlier also at the meeting of the airport committee. So let's see. So so this is a work session item, so that we're going to take public comment first. And I'm going to ask, and I do know we have some, don't see any on Zoom right now, but I know we have here in the chambers, Andy Wilson, who would like to comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, council members, staff, my name is Andy Wilson. I'm on the board of directors for Cal Pilots, California Pilots Association, and we are monitoring this. I wanted to let you know that. And I have attended other Zoom meetings. I had some personal matters to take care of. I had a new phone to replace. My QR code doesn't work, so I'm here. So my only message is Cal Pilots is monitoring the space, how it's going to be developed, how it's going to be used, and probably be making comments as well. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think we have any other speakers here, but we have a couple on Zoom, it appears. Meredith?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for your time and for all of you being there. I just wanted to throw out a few comments. I am one of the residents who currently lives up on Via Sarita, which is in that yellow safety zone area, right near the business development proposed area as well. So this is going to greatly affect us and our family. A few of the points I kind of wanted to just put back out there again is that this is a huge disappointment to see that this is kind of progressing along. We have a lot of concerns, and maybe this is actually something that Hayward could help us out with, that we currently hear a lot of racing sideshow activity over in the industrial areas, and we really worry with the expansion of more businesses that that will continue to increase. I have videos actually of the noises going from our deck and even walking out onto the property. We currently have a lot of problems with moles and skunks this past summer. It was wonderful to see that a lot of the yard was maintained and kind of cut back to help with some of the overgrowth and concerns with fire. I'm really concerned about the loss of these beautiful trees. From the looks of Livermore, and having been out to Livermore before, I really worry about just having this big, ugly, open dirt or grass path with none of these beautiful trees that were really a huge asset to our property value. And I really worry about the future effects of losing that just beautiful landscape that we have, and that is a great asset to our home. I worry about the loss of all the wildlife that we've seen increased, just birds, owls, fox, all of the wonderful things that we've kind of seen out there. I had a huge increase in the noise of planes since the spring. Definitely with the crash in LA recently was a huge concern. Not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, we had a plane engine pop right over our house and make a sharp turn into the airport. It happened actually twice, a few days apart, and that was a huge concern because we did witness the crash about a little over a year ago right behind our house at the clubhouse. I also worry in the future with construction. If there is construction in the past, when some of those trees have been cut down, just trimming alone has layered a huge sawdust layer in our backyard. My kids' toys and trampolines have been covered in layers of sawdust. Our swimming pool has been filled by it. We didn't receive any prior notice that it was happening, so we weren't able to kind of cover the pool or anything like that. So I do worry about construction, just us, dust and asthma for our neighbors. We are currently having problems talking to our neighbors because it's increasing the noise. We have to stop our conversation. So I'm just as a neighbor in general, it's been a great effect on all of us and the neighborhood kids that have kind of grown up and played in those areas with those beautiful trees and landscapes. They're really going to be losing this. I have a lot of other comments, but I'm running out of time. So again, I just wanted to thank you for your time, and please consider what a huge impact this is having on all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Randy W.
Hello, thank you for your time. I really enjoy walking and biking there. I think I said that in the last meeting. I think that, you know, they call them all wildlife attractants, but to me, that's what makes the area beautiful, you know, to have the ducks and the geese. I mean, how many collisions are actually happening, you know, with these animals and the airport? We've got a pond at the San Lorenzo Community Park that's full of ducks too. Also, on our side, the talk of the pocket park, where it says only about 8 acres, I mentioned that before too. It'd be nice if that was closer to 16 or 21, kind of to match what the other side is getting, which is closer to 13. Also, Councilmember Zerminio talked about Chabot having a regional campus there, or even fire training. I think that's a really good idea. If we could work with Chabot College, I mean, they would be the perfect people to have in there and continue to make it beautiful. So I don't know if that's set in stone about not having, you know, education or something Chabot related. So much of the industrial area, when I bike out there, there's so many buildings that are already vacant. So to build more kind of ugly industrial, you know, we just want it to look nice and beautiful. I also, you know, the ponds, the 3 ponds are great. Let's try and keep those 3 ponds. That's what adds to the area. when you walk it, or if you do end up building there, people will want to walk around these ponds. You know, you see stuff like that in Pleasanton, of course. And also the clubhouse. The clubhouse really should be saved. There's talk about knocking it down, destroying it. Let's keep it. Let's make it a community center. I mean, Hayward Acres is nearby and they could really use something like that. Or you've got a commercial kitchen in there. People will enjoy training in there, you know, learning about kitchen stuff and cooking. Or even a lot of these food trucks are always wanting to rent kitchens. And, you know, to knock that down would just be so sad. Also, Councilmember Zerminio mentioned trails. I'm all for that. Let's make that Sulphur Creek Trail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just on one of your points, I think there might have been a little confusion about something that Councilmember Zerminio said, but the project I think he was talking about is a training center, our Firehouse Training Center, which will be a regional training center in which we have partnered with Chabot College, and that is actually being constructed, but that is on the south side of the airport on Winton, where the old firehouse was. So that is in the works, but it's not part of this project. Thank you. Next, we have Christina Afletes.
Hi, yes, my name is Christina Fletes. I live within walking distance to the SkyWest property. It's been great to see how many community members have given public comment about this property. And because of that, it's disappointing to see this draft and to see that business development is part of it and expansion to the airport. I think the community has been loud and clear that they want to preserve this area as a green space. We know about Kennedy Park. We know about San Lorenzo Park. We're asking for more. We're asking to preserve this as a green space. And a lot of us are concerned about more business development, expansion to the airport. I was further concerned when I saw that the local and small airport in San Jose, a study showed that there's been high levels of lead, and it's greatly affecting the health of the community. And I'm equally concerned about me and my neighbors and the effects of the airport on our health, and any expansion could lead to greater negative health impacts on our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dario.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Just wanted to reach out and speak to you and really ask, if there's so much acreage for the business development, why are more hangars being built so close to hangars? I really feel that that business development center area should be dedicated to expand the airport, which is further away from residents and closer to existing industrial areas. So there's no real point of having these airport expansion lean up against the community. You know, the decibel levels of planes flying over our homes is really loud, not to mention the health concerns that a fellow neighbor has also expressed. You know, we send in complaints to the report about airplanes flying overhead, very loud, causing disturbances at all times of night and day, and they're falling on mute ears. They don't listen. They continue to fly overhead very low, as if taunting the community, it seems. And with the expansion of this airport hangars, what guarantees does the council guarantee that the airport will be respectful of, you know, the community? Because it doesn't seem, when we send in complaints, that they're listened or even acted upon. So we really ask, why are we building these hangars so close to the community? Why not use that acreage that is intended for business development for that instead, to expand the airport as much as they want that way? So it's really concerning to see how much the council and the airport is disregarding what the community wants. And I fear that this is going to drive property levels lower and have, you know, the residents that live here want to leave. I don't know if that's what Hayward wants, but I feel like expanding the airport will cause that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we have Mimi Dean.
Mimi Dean, please go ahead and unmute.
Sorry, I had a hard time unmuting. Okay, so I guess my main thing that I'm going to talk about is, the Hayward general plan. And the general plan, one of the biggest things about the general plan is one of the greatest challenges that Hayward is facing. And one of them, number 3, is enhancing neighborhoods with parks and/or community centers. And it just seems like Sky West is an amazing place to make into just the most awesome park and a community center that we can do so many different things with: art, environmental things, growing food, processing food. So I really have I really spent a lot of time looking at the general plan. I looked at the guiding principle number 1 that talks about providing youth with enrichment activities and programs, which could happen at this location. Guiding principle number 2, encouraging residents to live active, healthy, green lifestyles. Guiding principle number 8, that Hayward should preserve, enhance, increase, and connect its baylands, hillsides, greenway trails, and regional parks to protect environmental resources, mitigate the impacts of rising sea levels, and provide opportunities to live an active outdoor lifestyle. I could go on and on about the general plan, Looking Forward 2040, but I think you guys all probably have a copy of it, so I'm not going to do that. And I think we should really try to work within this plan. And we should consider these things when we're looking at the Sky West redevelopment. So there's a couple of things that I really think are important. Besides, there's so many great parks in Hayward, but they're all in different areas. The only one in this area is Kennedy Park. So I just feel like the communities around the Sky West property, they just don't have the park space. And we know that there are marginalized communities and there's less than 1/3 of an acre of park space per 1,000 people. And that's not okay. We should be implementing other things that are successful in other Hayward parks, like the outdoor gyms. We should be looking at this area as a buffer for sea level rise. And we should be doing educational activities and signs. There, we could even have art that demonstrates environmental ideas and climate impacts. Of course, I love trails for walking and biking and dog parks and keeping trees and ponds. I totally agree with that.
Thank you. I'm sorry your time is up, but thank you for the comments. And with that, I'm not seeing any other requests to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comments and now invite comments from council members. And we will start with Council Member Zermeño, who is the chair of our airport committee.
Thank you very much, Mayor. 3 questions. First, do we have the number of trees that will be felled by all of the activity that's being proposed? How many trees will we lose?
I don't think we've calculated a specific number. I think that there might be 2 things at play here. I think that the ongoing maintenance of the trees right now is one concern. Many of them are already falling down or having issues that they've had arborists out for. Doug can speak more if you have more questions on that. And then there is what actually would need to be done in conjunction with the FAA for those safety zones. But we don't have a number, but we can.
All right, I just want to make sure that every tree we kill, we replace it with another one. All right. Let's see, another question is, have any of the geese there caused any problems in takeoff of our airplanes?
Council member, yes. We've had some interactions. There's a database that the FAA maintains, and these are comments from pilots self-reporting. That doesn't encompass all the problems. just the ones that are reported. And there have been a variety of birds, including geese, that have caused various incidents. Nothing, fortunately, that resulted in the crash of an airplane, thank goodness, but nevertheless was of serious concern.
So nothing major. Okay, all right. Let's see. Can there be a trail around the perimeter of the whole area?
There can in certain areas in that airport safety zone that's closer along Clubhouse Road that would want to be avoided to attracting people within that airport safety zone. But we are trying to maintain the existing path that's along the residential side, so the northern portion as opposed to the southern portion of the property.
Is there a chance we could see the map?
If
the plan.
If it's possible to share the presentation again from. Thank you. Can you? Okay, you can see. It might be a little hard, but you can kind of see my mouse.
All right.
So within this yellow area, it would be difficult to try to add a new path along here and still meeting FAA.
So on the north side of the traffic safety zone, it's possible, but on the south side of the traffic zone, it's not possible. Is that what you're saying?
What we'll be trying to do in working with the FAA, knowing that there's an existing path there today, is to maintain that path. So it's a continuation of what is there, to knowing the importance of it, as opposed to introducing a new feature.
Okay, it would be a good addition. Okay, and a couple, yes.
One other thing, Council Member, I'd just like to point out that based on the comments that we've received through the workshops and also from Council, we have greatly expanded the recreational area and reduced the number of hangars in the blue and green area there. The enhanced green area, the open area, would probably lend itself to having more trails and things in that particular area. Could be.
Okay. And is there, it wasn't mentioned today, did we forget to perhaps include exercise stops? So that's on there.
Yes, that was mentioned. Go ahead.
All right, and then also there was a couple, and this report had mentioned a little bit the cost of taking care of the open space, the parks. My guess is that's going to be covered by the airport. I don't see, or are we expecting HARD to come in and be the caretakers?
Well, if HARD does it, there would be some negotiation that would have to take place with them, but also the developers who were ultimately selected would probably contribute to that. So at least that would be our position in terms of negotiating.
Okay. So if it's not HARD, it'll be the city.
I'm sorry?
If it's not HARD who will take care of the parks, it will be us, the city.
It'll be us.
Okay, all right. So, Mayor, just questions, or can I?
No, this is for questions and comments.
Okay,
so go ahead.
So I only have really two things. The open space at the moment is only 10% of the present site, and I'm not happy with that. It's 126 acres, and we're only planning 21 acres of open space. I don't like it. So I would like to see a decrease on the safety zone because it's really wide. It could be narrower, in my mind. Commercial zone, 47 acres. Security zone, 36 acres. So that really is my only comments. That I'm not happy with only 10% of the SkyWest being open space. I'd like to see the others decreased. And thank you very much.
One thing, if I could quickly mention, in terms of open space, the office park gives us an opportunity to include open space within the buildings. It's not going to be tightly knit buildings and that's it. We could have some open space in there too.
Yeah, but it will not be the amount of, it won't increase the 10% a lot. And that's what I dislike about it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. So I kind of want to go to this map. I'll start here since it's up. Now the safety zones, the safety zone, can it be expanded or shortened? Is that a policy decision that we make?
So the safety zone right now, the size is based on a combination of what is required by the FAA, and that one is a very hard line.
Yeah.
And then some of the more expanded width has to do with the Caltrans airport safety zones, which are based on land use compatibility. So that is regulated by the Alameda County Land Use Commission, so it would have to go up against that to get that approved if we wanted to put anything in else within that area.
Yeah. So I asked the question because I want to know how restricted we are, right? I mean, we might be unhappy, to go back to Councilmember Cermeño's point. I mean, we might be unhappy with the size, but how much flexibility do we have to change it? And what I'm hearing is very little, if any.
It'll definitely be a discussion point with the FAA through that next coordination process, but things that we've been seeing in the last, even 3, 5, 10 years is a lot of the policies that they've had in place for many of years. The way that they've asked for it to be implemented is much more stringent, and they're much less flexible. And especially when there's a new case presented, something has changed. They've allowed in this area some grandfathering in, but once the condition changes in any way, they want you to follow the letter of the policy. And that's the case that we're up against here.
Got it. And then included in the RFP, will there be an economic study done? Will there be some kind of analyses in terms of earning potential, revenue potential in, let's say, in the economic development, or even in the business, either on the, I don't know, is it the west side and then the east side of the
It may be better for Doug or Alex to handle, but I think that we've definitely heard the request for kind of a market feasibility study. So I imagine at a certain point that will be done. I just don't know what specific details that might include at this stage. That's something that needs to be discussed.
But we did hear loud and clear about economic development, loud and clear. So we'll pursue that for sure.
Okay, and then, and did and I know it was in the report, but I just wanted to make sure I heard this right. So the sale of the property has to be at fair market or market value? Is that what I heard?
So it's not intended to sell it, but to do leases, longer term lease property. But yes, that would need to be at fair market value. That's an FAA requirement as well.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, Madam City Manager, we're not selling this, right? Yes, okay, good. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay.
I just want to make sure, so everyone, with airport property, we would have to get special FAA exemption to sell it, which they're very reluctant to do because actually in their transfer of the property to us, they have the ability to take it back from us at some point if they ever chose to do so, if they needed it for aviation purposes. So we would not sell airport land.
And I would not want to sell it. I just wanted to clarify and really make sure that, sometimes we have to say it out loud so that people know. Okay. The other thing is the RFP. Could somebody? I know we have someone from HARD here, but could HARD take on the RFP and develop if they say the park portion of it? Let's say theoretically they could take on this RFP, right? Correct.
Yeah. Theoretically.
Yeah.
We've spoken with HARD. They were involved in this from the beginning and offered many valuable suggestions on how to proceed. We're grateful for that. So, yes, that's possible.
Okay. Then, and I know we talked about, I know this came to the airport committee, and I know we talked about it, and I guess that, and I know, and to go back to, I think Mimi brought it up, You know, I know the general plan outlines our sort of our priority. In the general plan, it outlines our priority, sort of our vision for swaths of land and parcels. Have those priorities and visions been expressed, or will they be expressed in the RFP?
Yes, I would expect that they would. Also, keep in mind that the airport itself has a master plan.
Yep.
That would be expressed in there as well.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so just a couple of comments, and it's just some general sort of high-level remarks. So one is I was real pleased to see outreach, and I know this is something that we talked about in the airport committee, and I just wanted to reemphasize and say it again, and I know we have someone from HARD here, Rick Hatcher from HARD. While input north of the site is important, especially the good folks that live along the line, but I also am extremely concerned that we get a good, robust response and input from the southern side, right? From all of the neighborhoods south of A Street, so to speak. Because I don't want to forget that, you know, this is the city of Hayward's property. And, you know, and we want to make sure that the voices in the city are represented and are heard on this property, or are heard concerning this. So I'm happy that we're getting a lot of input. I mean, there was, 83 or 84 pages of input, and which is good. So I'm pleased to see that. I just want to, in the future, I will continue to have my eye on the rest of the city of Hayward, so sort of the south of A Street. The other comment I have is, you know, I just want to be clear in terms of my own priority for this site. No housing. I don't want to see housing. And Madam City Manager, if a housing project were to come here, I would vote no on this. And I think, because I don't, of all of the 83 pages, I don't think I saw one housing. I don't think I saw one person say housing. But I am, so I'll stop there and say, you know, I really want to preserve this to be what I'm going to say next, which is page after page after page is open space, right? And I absolutely agree with, you know, a lot of the callers that have been calling in. You know, I know we have Kennedy Park newly renovated and opening soon, if not already opened. But you know, whatever Kennedy Park doesn't have, I think this is a great opportunity to meet that, right? And to match that, right? Somehow create an outdoor learning space for, you know, all of the shoreline related content and curricula. I think there could be a lot of innovative, creative things done. You know, while I was happy to see, you know, everything from farming and, you know, a lot of the trails, and I think all these are great things, and I'm sure, you know, a good plan will include all that. But I couldn't help but to recognize in one of the letters, or I think in one of the matrix, there was a plan for a BMX bicycle track. Now, this is going to date me a bit, and Rick might even remember this, but out at the end of Depot Road, there used to be a bicycle track out there. And you know, kids would go out there and you know, and race bicycles. And so that caught my eye because I think that is something, you know, more and more kids are riding, you know, BMX. BMX is coming back, I think, in a big way. And so it'd be nice to see that done out there. But open space, of course, and really, you know, focus on you know, dog parks, a dog park, and, you know, really take advantage of that open space element. Lastly, with all of the open space vision and our priorities for open space, I don't want to forget and I don't want to let go of economic development. This is a great opportunity for us to expand our economic development. And if, you know, I heard the comments about, you know, people are concerned about, you know, the airplane hangars out there, but, you know, respectfully, you know, airplane hangars generate revenue for the city, you know, and if that industrial, if the business center concept is implemented and planned and implemented right and good, it could be a great opportunity. I have seen, and we have seen up here, business plans or development plans that have included robust green space elements to it. And I just think it just takes a good, innovative, creative developer to include those. And, you know, and I might even add that if we do have a developer for a business center come in, that be put in the RFP, that there are open space elements that make whatever is put there, to borrow a term that I know Councilmember Andrews is always talking about, is, you know, making our industrial area a destination, right? A destination place. And I apologize to Councilmember Andrews. Hopefully I didn't steal your thunder on that one, but I thought I would take it right now. So anyways, with that said, I think in general, those are some of the big ideas I have on this site. Thank you, staff, for developing this. And I continue to listen. And I know I know Rick over there he's going to be talking to us, and I know he's been talking to us too about this site. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to our general manager from HART as well. So glad you guys are here today. So I appreciate the comments of both of my colleagues, and have a few things to add. So first, I wanted to touch on the runoff area a little bit more. So I'm not quite understanding how nothing can be there. Is it, I mean, people can walk through there, people can't walk through there. What's, you know, can you just speak to that briefly a little bit more?
Sure.
And also, sorry, if anything's current, you know, we have the water feature and the community center that are both on site. Are those being removed because they're in that area? So both of those things, please.
Okay, so the area in yellow, and I might start maybe by saying that our safety record at the airport's very good, comparable to other airports of our size. However, you know, at the end of all runways, not just at our airport, but airports all over the country, they have these safety areas, runway protection zone, runway safety zone, so that in the event that an airplane doesn't take off or land within the runway area, it has a completely open area to slide and come to a stop. We've also, over the years, had occasions where airplanes had some sort of incident difficulty in taking off, and they have been able to land in what was currently the golf course back then. So because of that use, it's important that it be flat and wide open. If you're sliding and here comes a big tree, that's obviously going to result in damage to the airplane and injury to persons, maybe even death. So that's why it's so important that that area remain open, and why the FAA takes a big interest in making sure that that area is open. Again, our safety record's very good, but we want to make sure that you know, we don't have a situation where people are walking along trails in that area, and then here comes an airplane. You know, that would not be a good thing.
And then are the existing features, the water feature and the community, or the center where the restaurant is, are those in the yellow zone currently?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so they would be removed?
Ultimately, yes.
ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that, because of the protected airspace, yes, they would be removed.
The intent is for that,
And bear in mind too, again, a comment that was made earlier that, the FAA rules have changed over the years and evolved, and what might have been appropriate in 1970 would not be appropriate today.
These are helpful reminders as we all try to sort of group think about this. And I really do appreciate, as my colleagues have said, the extensive outreach, the engagement with the Youth Commission and seeing some of their recommendations come forward and all of the work to meet with HOA, et cetera, et cetera. And cheers to the community who've been really involved in this process as well. So currently for Kennedy Park, that's also airport land. So does HARD rent from us, or do we pay HARD to manage that property? How does that work?
I'd have to look in, I have to look into that. It used to be airport land. I'm not sure if it still is. I honestly don't believe it.
I looked it up today, and it still belongs to us, unless my use of the GIS tool was wrong, which occasionally happens, but I believe it's still ours.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, I stand corrected.
That's okay. Okay, so that's one of the questions that I want to understand going forward. And it's okay that we don't have those answers tonight, but to understand going forward, how is recreation managed now? And then how might it be going forward? And is there room for things to be sort of public use, or does it all have to be commercial recreation use? So that'll be one of my questions.
Yeah,
as we go through this process.
We haven't put anything in the visualization process yet that would really answer that. I think that's the nice thing about the process, is that we have a chance to work through these things and come up with the best and highest use.
Understood. Thank you. And then just going to go down my list here. So I think I don't want to lose the opportunity to do some Russell City markers and Walk of Fame kinds of things. This is adjacent to where Russell City was, and I know there's committees thinking about that for Library Plaza, but and some conversations in the Community Services Commission, but I just want to put kind of a marker for that, or a placeholder for that recognition. And then I know Director Hatcher has been working on Rails to Trails, and I hope that perhaps some, that area, that project much better than I do, but I would hope that, as we talk about trail connectivity, I know there's been some response to the community's questions about connecting to existing trails, creating new trails. Perhaps there's some opportunity in that. And one of the ones I wanted to highlight was also the kind of looped trail for running cross country and so on. And with the open runoff area, I wonder if there's an opportunity for like carbon sequestration or something like that. If it has to be open, but could we apply something there as part of the 1383 goals, et cetera, question. And then related to that and just urban agriculture in general, I know there was a memo that came in fairly late today, but has some really good research on agricultural uses that do happen near existing airports. And so I ask staff to please take a look at that because I think what it sounds like is that it's about crop management, so that the crops that are there are not the type that attract birds, for example. Because obviously we want to create pilot and community safety, and it's not unheard of to have ag uses there. So I just ask that you look at that research.
Yes, the FAA does not have a strict prohibition on no crops. That's not the case. They don't say no crops at all. But what is fair to say is that it's not a best practice. And as you suggested, it's very important what you would select, because corn and many types of vegetables are wildlife attractants. So it would have to really be explored to make sure, because obviously we don't want to have an incident with birds and airplanes and that type of thing.
Yeah, and there really is a robust urban agriculture network in this area, and so those are partners that are available to help think that through if we can find this.
Do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
And I'm happy to help make connections with that as well. And then, similar to the Russell City comment, just that we're thinking about coordination with the Muwekma tribe, with Native peoples, both from responsible use of the land, et cetera, and what it looks like. And also the BIPOC community related to what happened in Russell City, and prioritizing economic opportunity. If we're creating some of this land for economic development, as Councilmember Salinas said, that we're prioritizing people who've been disenfranchised in this same area of the city. And then a couple notes on programs, and then I'll say one more thing about just the overall plan. I think I'd ask us to relook at the disc golf thing. My understanding is that really is a pretty low maintenance use. Ropes course is an interesting use, especially if we're talking, if we're talking about commercial recreation, then having those partners be the people who develop and maintain it seems like an interesting partnership opportunity. And also partnering with like the recreation department at the university, or sororities and fraternities, or scouts who tend to build things. And cricket is one of the ones that was mentioned briefly, but is something we've heard in I know we hear it in hard conversations regularly, that there really is a need for cricket fields. And again, that there are some commercial operators available for that. Bocce was another one. The pump track, I was in South Hayward over by Mount Eden Park, and there was a huge bicycle group running around town on that end of town. And I know there's a pump track coming to Tennyson Park. So we may have that need met, but if not, then that's certainly interesting. And then, so regarding the property itself, I understand the desire to have the highest and best use. I am worried about the hangars right next to the, I'm looking because the reflection of the map is over here, but it's really behind me. I am worried about the hangars. I appreciate that there's an additional buffer there, but I'm still really uncomfortable with that. The idea of creating space for electrical planes, if that's really, an economic opportunity that could be prioritized for that space. I'd want to know the noise impacts, but the emissions impacts seems like something that might be a middle ground there. And I'd like to see less on the business development side. I realize that's an economic hit, but if some of this space becomes commercial recreation, does that balance that? I'm not going to say no business park, but I think less business park would respond to the desire for more open space. As many people said, we need to preserve what we can, and we need to pay for the ability to preserve it. So trying to strike that balance, and I realize that has been part of your process as well. But I think I'd like to give the community more open space, if at all possible. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next we have Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for your presentation. And normally I talk about Russell City and being an industrial area, being a destination. So thank you, council members, for mentioning that. So I'll be brief tonight. One question I have is, what do you know the pro forma of making this recreation space, open space work in conjunction with the business park that is being proposed? Like, have we done some kind of an analysis of how much revenue is needed in order to make the recreation work?
The short answer is that no economic analysis has been done to date for that specific type of work. To be able to answer that at this stage.
Okay.
It's really been looking at what is possible in those areas within the existing site constraints.
Got it. Okay. And I'm hearing a lot of we need some revenue in order to make this work. So I'll be curious to know. I heard commercial recreational uses, which I agree with. We don't have a lot of those gymnastic uses. I know there's maybe one or two in Hayward, but I've seen in other cities there's a bunch, and they all kind of corral in the business park area. So I can actually see that being a complementary use to the recreation that would be built along this park. But I was also interested to hear if solar farms or wind farms were discussed as a potential business opportunity that could be a complementary use to the airport that wouldn't drive so much traffic to the area and does require a lot of space.
Well, there has been discussion about the possibility of putting solar on top of whatever type of hangars are developed on the site. That would be something that we should look at. Beyond that, we would have to study it. The FAA has, as you've heard on many other things, have regulations about what's possible on airports because we don't want glint or glare to go in the eyes of the pilots or the air traffic controllers. So it'd have to be looked at very carefully. But it has been discussed with respect to the hangars.
Okay, and just the comment of the overall plan, I'm very happy to see a lot of the uses being discussed. I didn't see a lot of discussion about public art, so I appreciated Councilmember Lamin's comments of acknowledging different groups as public art. And I'm wondering if we can also use the features that were being discussed as the public art. So it could be a twofer of, we get the use as well as being an opportunity for art. That could also help save on some of the cost if we are concerned about that. So I would definitely consider that. And then I would also, I would have you all look at Brooklyn Basin and see what they've done there. I really like how it's a huge open space. There's a lot of recreational use, but then there's also a public market, a little grocery store, a restaurant, something that's open for the public to use that is also a nice feature of the area. And it would be a benefit for, if we do have any commercial use, any business improvement district use, to have something like that. And I know a cafe was mentioned, but I thought that was a site that could be a good frame of reference and also be a good community benefit for the area, not just in Hayward, but for the county of Alameda. So I'm hoping that we can find complementary uses on the business side that would help offset some of the costs of the recreational sites. And if we can increase it, that'd be great. If we can figure out a way where we can have a commercial space that is also recreational use, that's outdoor, that would be also something I'll be interested in seeing. I'm not quite sure what that would be. I was thinking of something like rock climbing or something, but a lot of that is indoors nowadays. So something that can be a benefit for the community, but at a reasonable cost is also very important if that's possible as part of the RFP. So thank you. That's all.
Councilmember Andrews, can I ask you what area were you just referring to that you liked, that you thought we could do something like that here? I didn't catch what you were referring to.
So in the business improvement district area, if it's possible to reduce some of that business improvement district area to be recreational business that is beneficial to the public as well.
Oh, okay.
So not just offices in the business area. Yeah.
I thought you were referring to something that already existed.
Councilmember Andrews, you mentioned Brooklyn Basin. I think the mayor.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I don't know that. I don't know what you were referring to there.
Oh, Brooklyn Basin is actual location in Oakland. It's not part of the park area.
No, I know, but you were comparing it, and I didn't hear what you mentioned. So that's what I wanted to know what you were talking about. But
okay.
Now that I do, I don't actually know Brooklyn Basin, but thank you for mentioning that. I'll check it out. All right. Next, we have Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I appreciate the presentation, and I also appreciate the community engagement. I kind of wanted to understand why the airport is considering this part of the area as storage rather than the, I'm going to say, southern part?
I think there's a few points. One of them is providing access for the aircraft to get to and from the location, and making sure that they can adequately reach the amenities that are already provided. We don't want to try to increase runway crossings. There are 2 runways at this airport, so by providing additional facilities on the west side versus the east side, in order to get to things such as fuel, wash racks, and other services, they would then have to cross over the runways, as well as being able to provide taxiway access. There's not good taxiway access from the existing area. And we know that Sulphur Creek is right there, so in order to provide that access, there would need to be a bridge or culvert of Sulphur Creek in order to provide that access, and that is going to be challenging. Did anything else you want to add to that? No. Okay.
Okay. And I know Sulphur Creek was and has been kind of the biggest topic of concern for a lot of members of the public, especially friends of San Lorenzo Creek, that have advocated for a little bit more, I'm going to say, environmentally friendly options and protections there. I heard some of the comments from the public, as well as read the emails, just high level, because I know I have colleagues that have spoken about this, as well as, I think some more comments in addition to that. Personally, I wanted to understand a little bit more is there any option regarding the public golf course?
Are you referring to keeping it open as a public golf course?
Or some variation of it?
And Doug can chime in here as well. I know that it's been asked if a developer would want to come in and do a golf course, and I think based on what the financial situation that happened with the current one, it's just not feasible, especially when you introduce the fair market value cost. HARD was previously paying $140,000 a year for the 126-acre site. I don't even think that would cover the clubhouse with a fair market value at this stage. So if they were operating, I think it was a $1.2 million operating revenue deficit on an annual basis for the last 2 years, even before COVID hit. So the viability of a public golf course will be difficult. But it's
okay. And the reason why I bring it up is because, one, this would be a public golf course versus a private, without a membership, things like that. San Jose, the Milpitas, San Jose area has a driving range that is extremely popular amongst young professionals and teenagers and even adults who, just really want to hit a ball. The upkeep, everything's turf. It's not really grass. You pay, you eat, you move on. It's not, it's something to look at. And I know that, in other areas it has been extremely beneficial to the public and a place where people are attracted to. So I do just want to highlight that. Overall, high level, I personally would prefer open space, number one. I don't think that we genuinely have as much land that's open space in the flatlands as much as we could. I would also like the trails to be connected, both walking, biking paths, as well as trails. And, I do want to keep ponds. I do want to keep some of these natural spots kind of as is, if you will, as well as the buffer. And, if we can restore, I know one of the options, when I sat on the airport committee was the Sulphur Creek. If we were to do something with one part of it, we'd have to do it in another section. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
The mitigation you're talking, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
The mitigation for having to cover over Sulphur Creek because of aviation requirements. When you do that, you have to mitigate somewhere else. I think that's what you're referring to. Is that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question to that?
That's kind of a different issue, but
Yeah, no, but because we haven't found a genuine option, this has been, while I served for roughly 2 years on that committee, this was an ongoing discussion as to where are we going to find it, what are we going to do, how are we going to do this. I think that is something that we need to kind of explore a little bit more. I will also say for the public who asked regarding the farming, we did receive a letter from, I think, Supervisor Wilma Chan's office stating that that is not feasible. Because of the requirements. Are you guys able to elaborate a little bit more, Director Mary or anybody?
Councilmember Wahab, we just received that letter. We are going to look into it and see if there is any possibility to accommodate some kind of low impact farming. We are keeping an open mind regarding that.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that their letter basically stated that, it's, because of FAA requirements that they weren't able to. So as much as we can take a look at that Sulphur Creek, the dog park, I'm open to, but having that as available and open as possible. If you can come and put on the slide, the one that has the high level maps of, the airport area, the business area, and I don't remember the third spot.
Recreation
She's
area.
trying to switch to that.
Would you be able to put that map up?
Is it this map? With the site concept, is that the one you were talking about, Councilmember?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is, 47 acres for the Business Development Center. What are you guys truly looking at? Obviously we want to generate some revenue, maintain the property of the airport, and increase revenue over expenses. What has been the concept high level?
Maybe I can start. This is an area
1 second, we're
that
just repeating the question. Do you mind just repeating your question?
I
one last
missed the
time?
last part, Councilmember, I'm sorry.
High level, what is it that you guys are trying to create there? But I think Director Mary wanted to respond.
So this is just a concept plan. This is a conceptual area. We want to be able to attract high-level development here, maybe life sciences or something like that. They are going to not cover the entire area with buildings. They are going to include amenities, including open space. There was a comment that I heard earlier on that can those private amenities be made open to the public? That's something that can be looked into during the further development processes. It is not that the entire 47 acres is going to be densely developed, but something that can attract the type of developments that are looking for a combination of amenities and also high-level buildings for R&D.
Okay. I appreciate that. And, I'm relatively open to that. I do think that the public should get the most usage out of this area. I do live very close by to, well, not super close, but close enough. This has always been, talked about. There's a lot of residents here that have never known that, Sky West existed in this area, that there's a golf course, that they could potentially see anything out of this area. I think that we do need to kind of open this up, be able to connect the space. But specifically, I'm looking for more open space, walking, biking trails, biking paths, walk trails, things like that. It may sound a little redundant considering that we do have Kennedy Park, but Kennedy Park has a lot of other features that, if you are looking more for nature and just walking through or hiking or whatever the case is, I do see these as two different types of areas. I'm a little reluctant on the Business Development Center, to be completely frank with you, unless, as you said, Director Miri, if it's a little bit lower density, very open to the public, still has certain amenities that are available to the public. And same thing with the FAA airport safety zones. When I first saw this and read this, I was just wondering why can't we do it in in a different part of the airport. I understand the reason. I'm fine with the reason. I just think that we need to kind of open this up. It is not just Hayward residents, obviously. We do, this pretty much is the border of Hayward. So, we have to also accommodate the residents that live in the unincorporated area and are coming out to us to advocate for them. So I do want to highlight that. Those were my high level concerns. I look forward to potential other options for this area. And, I'll have an open mind to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll just chime in here. Well, first of all, the concept of open space and people wanting more, I think we all do want open space since the entire thing, other than where the clubhouse is now open space and has been operating it as a golf course. My understanding was that that a golf course, having been closed, I mean, could it be started up again under, I think it was sort of grandfathered, wasn't it? And not something that would be permitted under current FAA rules?
Well, not the concept of a golf course per se, but it was some of the things associated with the golf course that we talked about earlier, like the trees. We're constantly over there every year after we get our airport inspection from Caltrans, topping trees, in some cases taking trees that are diseased and old down. This is an every year thing. So does that answer your question or not?
I guess that if somebody wanted to come in and put a golf course in without trees, they could do it under FAA rules.
Yeah, it's the other issue, as we talked about earlier, is the financial aspect of it. There have been, over the years, some other people who operate golf courses who have expressed interest, but as I understand it, and I'm going on the minutes of the board, a hard board when they were debating this, and they were losing $800,000 at one point, then 1.2 million, and I'm not in the business of developing golf courses, but hard couldn't make it. I don't know if it's possible for anybody.
But you're saying that the reason then is totally economic and that FAA rules would not preclude having a golf course there still?
Well, that remains to be seen.
Okay. Because, people have talked about wanting a trail across that, across the, what you're calling the airport runway safety area, and that you didn't know if that would be permitted, and yet, people are, but it's okay for people to be out there playing golf.
Well, okay. Well, this gets back to the business mentioned earlier about the things that the FAA has changed over the years. Back in 1970-ish timeframe when they developed the golf course, that was permissible. Today, I don't think that it would work. Remember too that we have to go before the FAA with whatever we finally come up with and get their permission.
Okay, so, well, I would point out though that the runway safety area is going to be open space then. I mean, that is what this concept shows. So when people are talking about only 10% being open space, that's really not true. It's actually, if you count the runway safety area, it's 50% of the property or close to that.
Yes.
Okay, and what, I understand about trees, but what could be put on that area? What kind of ground cover? What kind of, to make it look okay for people who are walking, if we do put a trail on the north side like you suggested, how could that area be beautified?
And an apology for not providing like a very specific answer, but we're really gonna have to coordinate with the FAA on that one. Their ideal situation is a graded flat grass area. That's what they ideally want to see.
A what? I'm sorry.
A graded flat grassy area. That is
graded,
their
flat,
ideal
and grassy.
situation.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is something that we will definitely be taking in front of the FAA to talk about understanding that the community desires, what is there with the visual aesthetics, what can be maintained, especially to keep those visual aesthetics along those trails. but the idea of being able to put in different types of landscaping is going to be very limited in this area.
Okay, I'd certainly like to see, attention to that, and I'm glad to hear the answer there. I was going to mention that, okay, and on the aeronautics use side, these actually, would they be the smaller planes? Are you talking about tie downs or T-hangers? I don't know. It seems like you're talking about smaller planes, but I could be confused about that.
No, actually, you're not, Madam Mayor. Those are depicted as either T-hangers or a product we don't currently have, which is a shade hanger.
Right.
The shade hanger advantage is it's lower cost to develop those, which would be a lower price point for our pilots, which would be a benefit if we could offer that in the mix. But
And
these are small, 4-seat, piston-powered airplanes, and as Aaron mentioned earlier, electric airplanes are here to some extent, and they're really coming in the future. So I would envision developing that with a way to plug them in and use them for electric aircraft, which are a lot quieter,
Right.
greener.
Yeah, okay, that does, that would address some of the concerns the residents were making about what is happening in that area. And of course, the planes wouldn't be taking off from right there. They would be taxiing into the runway area. So, okay. And then finally, I'm surprised nobody mentioned this, but I really loved the suggestions from the Youth Council. And I just want to appreciate that you took it to them and asked them about it. And they made some great suggestions. I love the idea of an airport viewing area. When I was growing up, we used to, way before 9/11 and the closure of the airports, it used to be something I did with some friends every once in a while. I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing, but we would go to the airport and watch people, I guess. And but I think some people like to watch planes, and when I'm out there, it's always kind of interesting to see. So I love that suggestion, and and some kind of arts use too, they mentioned. So good for them. Please, Council Member Zermino, pass my compliments back to the Youth Commission for their input here. And I think finally, we need to remember that we do have to pay for what the public amenities that we do want to see here. There is, we have also got to provide some revenue to cover that. I would assume whoever actually does the work on that middle part, the runway safety area, the airport would be responsible for paying for it, wouldn't it? It's airport property.
Yes, well, us and I would anticipate federal funding, the AIP funding to help us do that work. It's already in our AIP budget in the future.
Okay. All right. So with that, and with...
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I overlooked Councilmember Marquez, didn't I? I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just really want to appreciate staff and the consultant. I think the outreach efforts for this has been really, really comprehensive, and it shows based off all of the comments and the level of engagement. So thank you so much for those efforts. Moving forward, in terms of the feedback we got tonight, I think the biggest takeaway was the request for more open space, which I am in support of as well, but obviously we have to figure out how we're going to pay for those amenities. So it's going to be really important to me. I'm not sure of the timeline with regard to the economic analysis. Is that something that there's an expectation that that's going to come back with the RFP proposals, or will that be done prior to releasing that? Can staff please address that question?
I don't think the timing is determined yet, but we can look into that.
Okay, I think that's going to be key. We really need to know that information. And also in terms of allowable space, or what I would like to see at the business center, I feel like I've made these comments before, so I'm not sure if it's when I was on the airport committee years ago, but I know one thing that we've heard a lot from community members, didn't really hear it mentioned this go round, but in the past, it's been the incubator space, the shared workspace, trying to find some other type of community benefit in this area. In the economic, in the business park is something that I'd like to see there. I am excited about the dog park. I just did a quick cursory review. I recently went to the dog park in Newark, which is absolutely amazing on Cedar Boulevard. But I also looked and saw that I think that project was over $800,000. So I just throw that number out there because that was sticker shock for me. And that's just a dog park. That's one component of this entire space that we're talking about. So again, just want to reiterate the importance of having that economic analysis to really figure out what we can do. And then it wasn't clear to me, let's say we do get an RFP for a private company that wants to operate the golf course. Do we have an answer from FAA, or do we just need to wait and find out whether or not that is an allowable use, whether it's a private company that wants to operate that site?
At this time, we don't have a specific answer to that. We have a general census of what they would consider as allowable or not, but we would have to take it back to the FAA to get a definite answer from them.
Okay, so what would the timeline be like once we get the proposals? Are we going to have to engage with the, are we going to narrow down the proposal we like, or does it have to be vetted by the FAA first? Help me kind of understand the process here.
I think the plan is to start coordinating with the FAA before the RFP process takes place. So the next stage is engaging the FAA. The airport needs to update their planning document, which is the ALP airport layout plan. And I believe you guys are hoping to start that in the next year. So once that has been kicked off, then the next stages will then be the RFP. So we're definitely not looking at, releasing an RFP in the next 6 months type time frame.
Okay, it's still a ways out. And then I didn't see this in any of the comments, but was there any mention of possible hockey use, roller rink? Did that come up at all in any of the comments?
I don't remember seeing that as part of the comments, but I think ultimately, for any of the suggestions, nothing is, precisely precluded. It's really going to be up to the respondents to those RFPs and the financials, as you mentioned. What are they willing to put forth, and what makes financial sense for them?
Okay, so I will put a plug. I know Planning Commissioner Goldstein has talked to several of us. He seems to have some really strong connections, I believe, with the Sharks hockey team, and is something that he's very passionate about. So hopefully, I'm happy to reach out to him to see if they have an interest in competing for this. And obviously, I think it's going to have to be something that's going to be a joint venture with many other business partners. But I think that's something that is definitely needed in this community, and would really hope that people do look at a roller rink. I know Commissioner Andrews mentioned Brooklyn Basin. I know that's a very popular activity. People roller skate, rollerblade, skateboard out there. And one of my fondest memories was going to an outdoor roller rink. I believe it was in Manteca. I don't even remember, but it was, when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and they just played this loud music, and just really, really fun thing to do. So I hope that we're thinking outside of the box. I think in order to make this a regional draw, we have to look at providing a recreational amenity that is not currently provided in the region. So those are 2 things I think we're lacking in this area. So hopefully that will be taken into consideration. I know this is very early stages, but again, I'm just really pleased with the level of outreach, and echo the mayor's comments. Really appreciate the Youth Commission weighing in on this as well. And I'm not sure if it's gone to Economic Development Committee, but I think those members obviously were here tonight, can share their comments, but I think this is something that obviously should be vetted there as well. I know it's already gone to the Airport Committee, but thank you everyone for your feedback and input. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And yeah, that last suggestion was good. In terms of the western end, where you're envisioning economic uses, that would be a good idea to, at some point when it's appropriate, take it to economic development too. But with that, I'm going to
Mayor, if I may? I just,
Yes,
I need to
Councilmember
make
Zermania.
just a clarification. When we speak about open space, we speak of space that can be personally enjoyed. So the safety zone is not technically open space because it's
Well,
not
but when you say that
enjoyed.
10% of the site, you have to take the you have to take the safety zone
Yeah.
out of it then, and then it's
Right. So the
still a lot
10%.
more than 10% of the site.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the outreach out there. I think that's tremendous. Very good job on that.
Okay, thank you, and I think, yeah, a lot of good comments here, a lot of good comments from the public. You've got so many comments, and I think, you've done you've made a good start to how we're going to use this, and again, the next steps are not immediately developing everything. There's a long way to go on that. So thank you for this look at it, and with that, we're going to move on to our second work session item, which is regarding solid waste and our solid waste and recycling franchise agreement with Waste Management, and we're going to get an update on that. And again, we will start with Public Works Director Ameri, who is
Thank
there
you.
online.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Waste Management of Alameda County has been providing garbage and recycling services to the city residents and businesses for decades. We are currently in the 7th year of a 7-year contract for those services. With council permission, staff have been negotiating with WMAC for a new contract since June of last year. Environmental Services Manager Eric Pearson is here to provide an update and receive council comments. I also want to mention that Mr. Brad Sia, who is WMAC's Area Public Sector Director, and some members of his team are also here to answer any questions. Eric, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Alex. Good evening, Mayor, council members. As Director Ameri mentioned, we have our current agreement with Waste Management is for solid waste recycling and organic services, and Waste Management subcontracts with TriSed to perform the residential recycling services. We've been working with Waste Management since the 1970s and with TriSed for approximately the last 30 years. The current agreement began in March 2015 and is scheduled to expire in March 1st, 2022. If we can reach agreement in the next few months, then a new contract could take effect in March of 2022. If we don't come to consensus soon, we could extend the current agreement. The agreement does allow for the option to extend for 3 12-month periods. So the city could extend the current agreement to March 25. So we began negotiating with Waste Management in September 2020. Things were a bit slow at first, but we've made good progress lately. Our overall intent is to preserve and enhance services and to minimize any rate increases. We've presented updates and received input from the Council Sustainability Committee a few times. Our discussions have focused on a few areas. The most significant topic has been compliance with the new state law, SB 1383. This law requires a reduction of organic waste sent to the landfill by 75% by 2025. It also requires that we purchase a significant quantity of organic material, most likely compost and mulch. It requires new colors for carts and bins. It requires an increase in edible food recovery by 20% by 2025. And there's more. So to implement these state regulations, we'll be presenting a local ordinance to council for consideration next week. And then some of the other items we've been discussing have been the purchase of low or zero emission trucks, increasing the number of public litter containers, and increasing the collection of illegal dumping. So the current contract is for an initial term of 7 years. We are considering for the new contract a term of 10 years to help spread the cost of new trucks over a longer period of time. And for the services upon which we've reached preliminary agreement, Waste Management has proposed a rate increase of less than 10%. We still have several key items to negotiate, so this rate proposal is likely to change. And we are proposing to maintain TriSed as the subcontractor for residential recycling. Both Council and the Sustainability Committee have indicated a strong interest in having more public litter cans to help reduce litter. And the Big Belly litter cans have better designs than compared to the old concrete versions. The Big Bellies have smaller openings in which to insert material, and they're bolted to the pavement. Our proposal is to increase the number of Big Bellies by purchasing 100 new Big Bellies to be phased in over 4 years. Also, Waste Management has agreed to increased liquidated damages for cases where cans are not serviced on the agreed upon schedule. The fee would be $500 for failure to empty a can on a designated day if it exceeds one occurrence in over 30 days. The current contract is a fee of $200 if it exceeds 25 times per year. And then also Waste Management would increase collections of illegal dumping. Currently, the contract allows for 6 collections per week, and the proposal is to increase this to 12 per week. So Waste Management purchases trucks on an as-needed basis according to the life of the vehicle. Due to a variety of factors, including charging infrastructure and vehicle range, Waste Management has indicated that electric trucks are not feasible at this time, but they have agreed to evaluate the possibility of electric trucks each time new trucks are needed to be purchased. TriSed, on the other hand, their entire fleet is approximately 14 years old, and the trucks are beyond their useful life. So, however, we are concerned about purchasing an entire new fleet of internal combustion vehicles, and given that these would be around for the next 10 or so years. So we're discussing options for low or zero emission vehicles. For pickup trucks and flatbed trucks, these are much more cost effective to be electric at this time. Both Waste Management and TriSed need these types of vehicles as well. And Waste Management has indicated that they can go electric with the pickup trucks and flatbed trucks. So we mentioned SB 1383. It's all about reducing the organics that go to the landfill. And part of this requires better sorting. To help with that, the regulations require consistent cart colors. They are blue for recycling, black or gray for trash, and green for organics. So while the full compliance with these container colors is not required until 2036, any new cart purchases must comply with these the color scheme. And Waste Management purchases carts on a regular basis. So rather than phasing the colors in over time, our proposal is to do a wholesale change in containers to reduce confusion. 1383 also requires that we monitor and enforce for contamination. So Waste Management has a technology they're proposing to use. It's called smart video cameras on the trucks that capture material as it's being emptied from the container into the truck. And then there are auditors who review those the video footage. The proposal is to do a 4-month educational campaign during which we would issue warnings to customers. And then after that 4-month period, then surcharges may apply. The proposal for surcharges is for both overages and contamination. If the recycling or organics container has more than 10% of non-recyclable or non-organic material, or if a customer puts a bag of garbage in the recycling, then they would receive a warning. After 2 warnings, then a surcharge would apply. The surcharge would be $25 for cart customers and $75 for bin customers. And if there are no incidents for a 12-month period, then this schedule would reset. And then the next 2 incidents after that would be warnings. For overages, if the lid of a container is not fully closed, it can be a significant source of litter. The overage fee would apply when the lid is more than 12 inches open, and it would be $10 per incident for cart customers and $75 for bin customers, again, after 2 warnings. In addition to the requirements for monitoring and education, the 1383 law also requires jurisdictions to purchase recovered organic products such as compost or mulch. This is a significant amount. The requirement is 0.08 tons per person per year. And while the current contract allows for Hayward to receive 500 cubic yards of compost per year, this new law is going to require that we purchase about 19,000 cubic yards of compost each year. This is enough to cover 208 football fields with a half inch of compost twice per year. So we're still working with Stop Waste to determine how and where we can utilize this material. We're also looking at increasing the amount of bagged compost that Hayward receives each year for its compost giveaways, which is, we have one happening tomorrow. Waste Management has also maintained a customer service office on Main Street for decades. This office has been closed for the majority of the pandemic. It was used primarily for payments and ordering services. And prior to the pandemic, they saw an average about 17 transactions per day. Since the office has been closed, there's been a drop box available, and they've seen about 2 transactions per day of people dropping off bill payments. So Waste Management would like to close the office permanently. They've indicated that the cost savings would allow for a rate reduction of 0.39%. And this is approximately 14 cents for a typical residential customer. So staff is proposing that we keep the office open if the cost savings cannot be agreed upon. With the proposed rates, Waste Management would continue to budget for dedicated personnel for Hayward, including a full-time outreach coordinator and a part-time intern. And they would also provide a public education budget of $100,000 per year. And this covers the cost of mailers, video production, and advertising that are typically done on a regular basis. For a bulky pickup service for multifamily, the current contract allows for up to 4 yards of bulky items per unit per year. And this service has been generally very underutilized by multifamily properties since the service began in 2015. And multifamily properties are only limited by the cubic yards and not by the frequency. And if a property has a roll-off on a weekly basis, then there may be a tendency for regular garbage or construction waste to be placed in the containers. So to make the service more manageable, the proposal is to reduce the annual limit to 2 yards per dwelling unit per year, and also to add a frequency cap of 12 times per year. And we're still working on provisions for a carryover in the event that a property does not use the service for a month or 2. For multifamily recycling, TriSet does not have the ability to service bins. So currently multifamily customers who choose bins for recycling must pay a surcharge. We're proposing to eliminate this in the interest of tenants, and that we feel that this would improve equity. Regarding the volatility of recycling commodities, we're discussing contract language that would allow for Waste Management to request a rate increase to reflect the value of recyclables, so that there could be a rate increase if the value of recyclables decreases, or there may be a rate decrease if the value of recyclables increases. We're also discussing with Waste Management possible rate compression. Currently, the rate for a 32-gallon cart is $36 per month, and a 64-gallon cart is $65 per month. So this large difference in rates does not reflect the fixed costs of the service, and it may be too much incentive for customers to choose a smaller can when it may be too small for their needs. So the goal is to close the gap in the rates, but we acknowledge that we need to be careful to not cause too much of an increase for the customers that have the smaller carts. The current contract also includes diversion goals. They're very ambitious goals, and Waste Management has not been able to achieve these goals. So we're still discussing how those might be revised in the new contract. And so going forward for the next 2 months, upon direction from council, staff will continue to negotiate with Waste Management. We're planning to come back to the council in December for another work session. And if we can agree on the final terms, then we would return to council in January or February with a proposed contract. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this is a work session, so we're going to just go right to public comments on this item, if there are any. And I'm not seeing any online or in the chambers, so I'm going to open public comments. Going once, we do have a few attendees left, but I'm not seeing hands raised. And so I'm going to close public comments and we'll go right to council comments. And I'll start with Councilmember Lamnon.
Okay, then.
Questions and comments.
Questions and comments. You got it. Okay, so first of all, I want to appreciate Alex and Eric and the team for really working to protect the city's interests in these negotiations and in historical negotiations. We really appreciate that. I appreciate the desire to increase capacity of street to collect from street cans, but we're not even at current capacity. So is there a way to get more cans? I know there's 100 proposed, but I'd really love to see more. I mean, we need more cans in the community. And personally, I would prioritize that over switching out the personal cans. And I understand the consistency of color, but I'd actually prioritize that. I don't know if you have any comments on that or.
So in the contract, we are going to have a provision that allows for adding 100 purchase of and deployment of 100 of these big bellies that seem to be liked by the community. Regarding your comment about carts, it pains me to know and to think that tens of thousands of carts are going to be disposed of, but this is where we are heading. This is going to be statewide, and now is a good opportunity to go ahead and do this without a huge rate impact on our ratepayers. I calculated on the back of an envelope that the cost to purchase these carts could be about $10 million. So we are incorporating them as we go without increasing the rates too much.
And I appreciate that the desire is to keep the rates down. That's obviously a priority. I'd rather spend the money on on the big bellies than on the personal cards. I know it has to happen at some point. My personal preference.
Yes.
And then so there's the requirement to purchase organics. Could that be recovered food purchase, or does it have to be mulch or compost?
It would have to be mulch or compost, and there are some other options too, but they are not very practical for us at this time.
Okay. I want a chance to support food pantries, et cetera, so I had to ask. But I am interested in. I know some cities and counties are looking at subcontracting for food recovery, just as we do for recycling, and would be interested in that conversation. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of an organization that does food recovery, and obviously so I'm not advocating for any organization. There are multiples that do that, and obviously if we got to that point, I would recuse. But just as a concept, as you said, as Eric said, it's part of 1383, and so I'd be really interested in how, if that could be part of the subcontract.
Exactly, and we'll have to deal with that. We are going to bring a separate report to council regarding SB 1383 because of the multitude of requirements under this new law.
great. Thank you. And then I appreciate the attempt to coordinate with Hayward Unified and HARD. And is Castro Valley, not Castro Valley, sorry, New Haven Unified also in that conversation?
It has been included in the conversation. I don't know if Eric, if you have any more information.
We focused our discussions with Hayward Unified and CSU East Bay and Chabot College, but yeah, I think the competitive procurement requirements have definitely made it challenging.
Yeah, I saw that noted in the report. So I appreciate the difficulties too. And I think one of the challenges for that we've talked about in HLAC is just sort of a lack of consistency in, the city is pretty consistent about 3-stream, but the school district and the Parks District are not. And so to the extent we can extend that, it's great. And then thank you for including battery recycling. And then lastly, just, appreciate the conversation about having clean vehicles being added to the fleet and making sure that, I know Waste Management in theory has biodiesel trucks. So do we get some portion of those? Are they talking with Motive, which also a Hayward company, which is test driving, heavy duty vehicles, et cetera? There's funding for hydrogen fuel cell trucks, et cetera. So just appreciate the continued conversation to get the fleet greener. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. One, I do appreciate this. I kind of wanted to understand a little bit more about the cost, how it impacts residents, especially as we are still in a pandemic. And if you could talk a little bit more about that.
So the final cost has not been negotiated yet, but the preliminary numbers are below 10%. Some of that, I would say about 40% of that is related to the cost for TriSet because they have a requirement now to replace all of their 14 trucks, at this time, and some other factors. Those numbers have not been finalized. We just shared something with you that at this point, the numbers that we have received from Waste Management is just under 10%. So hopefully we are going to be able to refine them and reduce them to the extent that we can.
Okay. That is going to be a huge factor for myself and of course our residents. And, 10%, sounds like it's not a lot. People on fixed incomes, obviously 10% is significant. Any growth is significant. What is the average bill that usually comes to an average resident?
So that's the standard rate is about $35, as Eric mentioned. He has the precise number. There is an opportunity for folks that don't generate a lot of solid waste or use their recycling and composting more to subscribe to a smaller can, to a mini can, and pay less, at this point. The idea of replacing carts, having to replace carts under the new law pushes on the rates. If you can imagine, if every family needs to have 2 new carts because only our green cart for composting meets the right color. Those carts, 2 of them, can cost up to $100. And that is going to be taken into the rates, not a direct hit on customers. So paying part of that $3 a month or so, if we end up agreeing with the number, is going to pay for that and for CPI, which this year has been 3.1% just by itself. Even if you don't enter into a new contract, March 1st, CPI is 3.1%. And then there are some other, smaller costs that we are working on.
Okay, and the reason why this is important to me is because, granted, the projection is over 10 years or so. these carts, these, you know, I'm gonna call it garbage cans, for the most part, are still very viable. Granted, they are heavy duty plastic. Number one. Number two is the fact that inflation has been, you know, everybody has been warned that, you know, inflation is going to happen far more significantly than we can predict. So I'm worried about the cost overall. And then with CPI potentially coming up, as you said, right, this year was like 3%, you know, in a year or 2 years, what does that really look like? And how the $35 a month can potentially jump to $50 a month or $60 a month. I would like to know where the cost-cutting strategies are happening rather than just, you know, pushing the cost on the consumer. So that is something that I want to hold these companies accountable for. And it's something that I think that the city of Hayward should kind of be very firm on. We have a lower income city than many other cities in Alameda County. We have a working class population and a growing senior population. Our homeless numbers, things like that, all projected to go up. So cost is extremely important, and I don't want to add more of a cost to others. So as much as possible, if we can kind of debate that, 10% I think is still too much. And if I remember correctly, even roughly 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we've already approved rate increases as well. So as much as possible, I do want to highlight that. So those are my 2 cents, and I appreciate the time and effort. I know you guys are going to advocate as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Zermano.
I saw Councilmember Andrews on the screen. I thought it was her turn. So anyway, let's see. Good job in all respects, Alex and Eric, for the report. Thank you very much. I like what I'm seeing. Maybe we can work on something lower than 10%, but we'll see how we get there. I like the efforts that are being made with waste management and Tri-Cid in our work to decrease litter and to decrease the carbon footprint. That's very important because that will help us meet the 1383 guidelines and requirements. And boy, we better do that. On the fining people for overfilling their bins and their trays, I received a call from a business owner who was very upset. So I went over, and he told me that he was overcharged, or he was charged more by Waste Management because his trash bin was overflowing. And he swears that it was not he who had overflowed it, but it happened on 2 occasions where people just dumped material in his bin. And so in our efforts to educate our community, we need to tell folks, especially with bins, take some preventive maintenance, some preventive measures to ensure that people do not use your bin to dump your garbage. That should be a part of the educational program because we don't want people upset. And I know it will cost more litter around bins that have been, I've seen many bins that have been locked. That's the way it should be. But unfortunately, if you leave it unlocked, people are going to use it, and it's going to cause havoc and hurt our small business owners. So that's something that we really need to be careful. So work with Waste Management on that, please. Aside from that, so far so good. More trash cans, more big bellies, more pickup of illegal garbage. I think that's excellent. So thank you, Alex, and thank you, Eric, and the rest of your staff.
Thank you. We listened to your comments in the past.
Thank you. Now, Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Eric, for your presentation. I'm sorry, Mr. Pearson, for your presentation. I did on some of the comments on rates. I I would like to see if we can revisit those numbers, even though it's a couple of bucks for some folks, given their usage, it's a lot for others. So we'll just, if we can revisit that, I did all those comments. I also wanted to see if we could have a stronger partnership with Keep Hayward Clean and Green. I know that in the past we've asked to have our calendar on the Big Belly bins. Also interested in seeing if their community engagement can partner with us more on some of the events. I know they partner with us on Make a Difference Days on the bigger days, but we need their support all year long. So I don't know if there's something we can look at for doing maybe compost giveaways on a cleanup day, so we can get more people out to clean up and then they can take their compost home, something in that vein. And then also I was interested in knowing if there was opportunities for public art on the Big Belly bins. I do see graffiti on there from time to time, or I see advertisements that, you know, it reminds you of your bulky pickup, but it could be an opportunity for public art as well. So I want to see if those opportunities are feasible with discussing with these organizations.
That's a great idea, and we'll look into it for sure.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Pearson, for your presentation. And Mr. Amari, I know you are both very diligent in these negotiations. So thank you for the update. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Did I understand correctly that Waste Management is requesting to decrease the cubic yards worth of space for the bulky pickup? Did I hear that correctly?
For multifamily developments, the cubic yards is going to go down from 4 yards to 2 yards, but it's going to be managed in a better way. The idea is to increase participation and allow people to be able to take advantage of the service that they have. Right now, very, very few families, very few tenants take advantage of the service that they are entitled to.
And this is just for the multifamily housing?
Yes, yes, only
Okay.
for multifamily. There's no change to single family.
Single family. Okay, good. Because I was getting a little bit worried there. I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to have more illegal dumping. So thank you for that clarification. So yeah, I'm in support of the efforts. We'll also echo as much as we can to manage the expenses to bring the costs down as much as possible. Echo Councilmember Wahab's comments in terms of what can the company do in terms of scaling back on their end, so we don't have to put this burden on our residents. And really happy to see staff taking a strong position on not agreeing to close the office site. I know that it seems like the use has been down, but I know prior to COVID, it was a place where a lot of people went, people that prefer to deal with cash, a lot of our elderly residents. So I just want to make sure that we try to maintain that as much as possible. That's going to be important. And look forward to the updates. Hopefully we can wrap this up, and thank you for representing the interest of our community members. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other council members wanting to speak at this time, I'll go ahead. First of all, the state. I mean, they're telling us that we have to get rid of, what was it, 13,000 tons or something of, I forget, it was a big number of tons of compost or mulch. I would suggest perhaps the mall in Sacramento around the Capitol might be a good place for us to take some of that. I guess I'm suggesting that facetiously, but really, I am very disappointed. I mean, it's like, what are you thinking here, you know, to put these onerous requirements? I mean, I am very much in favor of us trying to minimize our waste as much as possible. I know Councilmember Lamnon has been and all of my colleagues want to do that, and we understand the need to do it. But this is ridiculous when the state itself has done so little to reduce waste in our society through regulating the business community and, you know, the incredible wastefulness that comes with packaging, And also not being clear about what is recyclable and how, and just allowing, I mean, there are those little triangles on everything. That doesn't tell you where that thing goes. And there aren't standard requirements. I mean, I know I'm on a diatribe and it doesn't really have much to do with our, with our own contract here, but really when I read this, because I'm really interested in this subject. I really want us to do what we can to reduce, to be part of getting, of the whole reduce, reuse, recycle and rot, mantra there that we've been taught for quite a few years now. But, two things. I mean, I'm surprised none of my colleagues have really brought up the camera surveillance, which, considering the incredible discussion that we had about drones, which, I'm not opposed to this necessarily because I do think, we don't want people to totally blow off putting things in the right bins. But it's hard right now, even for someone as knowledgeable as we are on council and getting these reports and, keeping up on things, to always know what goes where. And I think there needs to be a lot more education and messaging if we're going to go in this direction and actually start, putting fines on people for putting I know that it isn't going to be enforced quite that way, that it's going to have to be somewhat egregious, but it does concern me somewhat. And so we need to do what we can to do a better job of educating. And I know our staff is out there at street fairs and having little games to show people what goes where. But part of the problem is that the state has not created uniform standards, so that now we have this situation with the schools and, and the college not having the same service, so it's different. We need to find a way so that people who are having to live under, deal in our city with waste management, know where to go to find out what goes where if we're going to start, this camera thing. And then I just don't know what we're going to do with the compost and mulch. I'll tell a story of my husband went, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago now, to get, on one of the free compost. He waited in line for quite a long time, and then when he got there, they were out. I don't imagine that will be a problem in the future, since we will have unlimited quantities of it. But I just wanted to point that out, that we need to make sure that if people are going to come pick it up, they shouldn't have to wait in long lines, and maybe we need to find a way to get it out there in a different way, or, let people sign up and perhaps come pick it up, or I don't know, but I think we could get more out there if we could do that. And let's see. That's pretty much it. I understand that people are concerned about raising the rates. We're always concerned about raising the rates. And the reason we've done it more recently is because each contract has built-in annual increases. And the requirements are getting harder on the haulers, Waste Management, Tri-Sed. But I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and to the extent we can find ways to reduce the cost, that would be good. The bins, they want us to reduce waste, but they want to waste all these bins. I like the idea of painting them. At least that's not wasting a bin, or having it have to be have they told us where we should be disposing of these bins, these state legislatures who passed this legislation? I think I'm calling mine tomorrow to talk about this, but anyway, I don't know if you want to answer any of that. Some of it was in questions, but more of it's just a sort of rant here about this coming down on us in the way that it is, and yet a lot of problems that the state legislature could be addressing regarding reducing the amount of waste they're not doing. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move on to our final item of the evening. And That is item number 11. And then when I turn the page here, item number 11 is a review of the community agency funding process and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor to appoint 3 members of council to form a subgroup to work with a committee of the Community Services Commission to review and discuss the community agency funding process. So we are going to hear, I believe, from, not from Assistant City Manager Ott, from Ms. Bloom. Yeah.
Hi, I'll be introducing the item and then I'll be turning it over to Carol Lee and Commissioner Artie Garg.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
One second, I'm just loading the PowerPoint. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Jessica Lobanon. I'm the Acting Community Services Division Manager. This evening, I will be handing over the presentation to Carol Lee and Commissioner Artie Garg.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. As Ms. Lebanon said, this evening I will be presenting alongside Commissioner Garg on the review of the community agency funding process. In terms of presentation outline, I will start with a brief background, an overview on the community agency funding process, present staff's recommendations, next steps, and then we'll have an opportunity for council questions, public comments, and council discussion and action. For the background, as most of you are already aware, the Community Services Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. They play a critical role in the community agency funding process. Part of their responsibility is to review the applications, interview each of the applicants, and then they make a recommendation to council for how a portion of the city's general fund and the city's community development block grant entitlement award should be allocated. This graphic here kind of provides an overview of the community agency funding process. As you can see, it's an annual process, and it is a process. It's a highly competitive process for funding. Each year, this process is initiated with the publishing of the NOFA, and that's followed by a mandatory bidders conference. The purpose of that is really for staff to engage our currently funded agencies and new agencies to answer questions and provide technical support as needed. Once the applications are received, city staff, as well as the CSC, engages in extensive review of these applications. And then in November, the CSC, at their November meeting, the chair of the CSC appoints 3 application review committees, and we call these the ARCs. Following that, the ARCs spend 2 Saturdays in January interviewing each of the applicants. In March, they deliberate, and then in March, they report back to the full CSC, and they prepare draft recommendations. In April, they present these recommendations to the full council. There's an opportunity for council to comment, ask questions at a work session and a public hearing before taking action. As you can see in this process, the CSC plays a crucial role. Not only do they recommend funding allocations, but they also provide valuable feedback to staff on how to improve the process. And Commissioner Garg will elaborate on that later in this presentation. In the last couple years, however, we've experienced a challenge, and this challenge has really interrupted this cycle. The challenge stems from a disparity between the funding available and the funding being requested from community agencies. The CSC has expressed a need to reevaluate the process, as well as to reassess council's priorities. Regionally and locally, we were already facing a housing crisis and the resulting increase in homelessness, but that was further intensified with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, in FY22, the city saw the greatest disparity between the amount of funding that agencies were requesting and the amount of funding available. In Figure 1 to the left, we see the total combined funding available between CDBG and general fund. While there's some variation in the various years, they're relatively within a given range, and staff doesn't expect a significant change in FY23. In Figure 2, you see both the total funding available, the line there, and then the bar graphs depict the total funding being requested. Like I said, FY22, we had the largest disparity between these two funding, the funding requested and funding available. And it was about 2.5 times which was available. And so this funding disparity causes an interruption in this normal community agency funding process, and it creates a challenge for the CSC when determining funding recommendations. In response, the CSC is requesting Council's policy guidance to better inform future funding recommendations. This evening, I'm joined by Commissioner Artie Garg, who will present the next portion of the presentation, and she'll provide insight on the requests of the CSC.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to present and represent the Commission and our proposed requests today. I want to, before getting into what we're asking Council to consider, I want to just highlight a couple of points that Carol raised. While there was a significant jump in the requested funds in FY22, as Carol mentioned, there's actually been an increasing oversubscription rate to the funding available through the CSC process. We expect that to continue because challenges such as the housing crisis that I think we'll continue to face on an ongoing basis in the city. And I'd also like to point out that there was a significant amount of additional funding available to many service providers in the last 2 years due to stimulus funds associated with COVID. So that oversubscription rate you're seeing is not for COVID-related services. It is for sort of general day-to-day community services that service providers in Hayward are looking and evaluating need to meet needs of our residents. So I just wanted to provide that context. And I also want to provide a little more background on how CSC has been trying to address some of these questions of really ensuring that we're meeting the services needs of our community members. I think it was in 2019, we formed an ad hoc committee to make some administrative recommendations to the funding application process, which were designed to streamline the application process, to remove some of the barriers for smaller agencies and newer agencies. And so I think that was a very positive result in that we have a number of new agencies that are applying for funding, and that is something we would like to continue. But I think because of that, we have questions, and we need a little more policy direction from Council in order to kind of understand how to balance between agencies that have historically received funding through the CSC process and new agencies, as well as some of the other questions around which types of services providers we should prioritize in the funding process. And so that's kind of the background of why we are asking Council to consider this joint work session so that we can sort of further streamline the CSC recommendation process moving forward. So these are some of the questions that we have put together as a commission, and we actually took a roll call vote on these in July to so these are vetted by the entire commission and represent some of the questions we would like to work with Council to better address as part of the CSC process. So just to read through them, I won't read them directly, but I'll paraphrase them. Some of the things that we'd like to ask are, what are the priority categories for funding that Council would like to see prioritized through this process? How does this process, the community agency funding process, fit into the broader strategic effort for the city has to provide services to Hayward residents? Here's an example, because housing, for example, has been such an important priority. how does the funding that the CSC recommends be allocated to housing sort of fit with other things that council and the city are doing? How do we kind of understand what some of the balance might be between service providers who are able to address, to serve many, many clients versus service providers who maybe serve a much smaller number of clients but provide unique services that might not be readily available or as easily funded through other sources of funding? That's a question that we tackle often as through the funding ARC process. And also, how do we think about prioritizing agencies that might be based in Hayward versus agencies that provide important services to Hayward residents but are not based in Hayward? And then I think there's a second slide. Some of the things that we also grapple with as through the annual funding process are questions of how do we handle, or how should we address service providers who have a long history of receiving funding through the community agency funding process? How should we think about whether or not the community aging funding process should be a sustainable source of funding? That is something that's somewhat unique. I think with Hayward funding, we've heard that from some of our agencies, and that's a question that I feel, that we feel we would like to hear some of council's views on. Again, kind of trying to understand how the CSC's recommendation and your understanding of our deliberative process sort of impacts the final decisions that you make as council to adopt those or change those funding recommendations. And then also to understand, is there a desire within council to have this be potentially an ongoing iterative process and communication between council and the CSC so that we can maybe have an ongoing alignment between priorities?
Thank you, Commissioner Garg. To be responsive to the CSC's request, staff is proposing to create a joint community agency funding review committee that is comprised of a subgroup from City Council and a subgroup from the CSC. Staff's recommendation this evening is that the council adopts a resolution authorizing the mayor to select and appoint 3 members of council to form a subgroup to work with a committee of the CSC to review and discuss the community agency funding process and to provide recommendations to the CSC and the full council for further consideration. The next steps, if approved, over the next 2 months, the joint committee would convene and discuss the aforementioned questions. In July, staff and the CSC Community Agency Funding Review Committee would incorporate this feedback from the joint committee and develop a draft recommendation. In February, the CSC would review the proposed recommendations, and then in March, draft recommendations to the full council. In April, the changes to the community agency funding process will be recommended to the full council for review and approval, and at that time, council will have another opportunity to discuss, ask questions, and take action. If approved, this would still allow sufficient time for staff to implement changes and also to notify community agencies to be prepared for these changes. And that would be all before the next publishing of the Notice of Funding Availability, which is scheduled for September 2022. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Mayor for council questions and then public comments and then council discussion and action. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so questions at this point only from council. I don't see any hands raised. Yes, I do. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to staff and commissioners for bringing this forward. I understand the intent. I understand why they're asking for clarity. But one thing I did not hear is, and this is, I think, a question for the city manager, has there been any updates? I know it's something that I've asked for in the past, but we had discussed allocating funds from the sale of cannabis in our community to potentially go through our new Hayward Foundation to look at funding the unmet needs through the CSC process. So is there an update in regard to that timeline? And I know that was attached to like a specific dollar amount. We wanted to make sure we had enough funds in the account, but is there an update with that process?
Sure. We've done a couple of updates at the Budget and Finance Committee. I think the policy, it was either $500,000 or $1 million. I think it was $500,000 of funds before we began allocating money from the Community Foundation. We're not there yet. I think I would have to go back and double check how many cannabis revenues we accrued last year, since really we only had one operator that was up and running. The other challenge, we've had some administrative issues with the partner that we selected, the East Bay Community Foundation, in terms of administering the accounts, and so we're working through that and trying to decide whether that is the partner that we want to stay with long term. So we will be working with the Budget and Finance Committee on making some recommendations around that. So one, there's not enough money in there yet to start allocating, and then two, we may have to revisit the partner that we've selected to help us administer the Community Foundation.
Okay, and I know this obviously doesn't get to the priority question, it's just more of resources. Another question I have is, historically, has the city ever modified the application to set a cap on what could be asked from the applicants? Have we ever done anything like that?
Not that I believe, but we do have a minimum. And not that that answers the question, but I don't believe that we have a cap for the request.
Is the minimum 10,000, 20,000? I don't recall. What is the minimum?
It's suggested to be 10,000 unless it's an arts and music applicant.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna, okay, I'll keep it to questions. I felt like this was a work session, but this is actually.
No, it isn't a work session, so we'll come back for comments.
I'll keep to questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. I appreciate the context and I appreciate your comments. And for Commissioner Gard, I guess my question is, let me see if I can frame this. Well, let me just say it this way. Did the commission think about the political implications of having political individuals on a committee like this? I'm just curious.
Yes, there was some discussion about sort of maybe not the political implications, but there was some discussion about whether we wanted to sort of keep this to the commission itself or whether we want to involve council. And I think that's why this is framed the way it is. We're not seeking guidance on specifically which recommendations to make, but just sort of, this body has been formed as a participatory budgeting commission. Certainly, we are not the only part of the services provision that the city does. And ultimately, our recommendations are just that, recommendations, ultimately that are voted on and potentially amended by council. So we thought that having input into and better understanding of how you view the work that we do and how it fits into the overall decision-making around services to the Hayward community would be beneficial to our work. And also specifically, and also because there's been such a change, I think, if I recall correctly, there was some discussion during the council meeting when this last set of recommendations were adopted. This oversubscription has not been historically the norm for this funding, and I think that really changes what the potential decision-making could come out of the deliberation process that we go through.
And I guess then my question to, I don't know, maybe the city manager or even the city attorney for this matter, has a committee like this ever been set up before to do a task like this? Can we think of one? I don't know, maybe Mayor can maybe think of something. Have we ever done this before?
A joint committee, I think maybe with
Yeah, I mean, I
planning?
think we have. I mean, I think it's, I'm trying to recall, like, I want to say it was around, like, the bylaws of, like, a working group, but it's not unheard of. I mean, I think obviously the group is making recommendations back to the council, so it's not like it's a formal decision-making body. You're not ultimately giving away your decision-making authority. You're just listening to the recommendations of your colleagues and deciding whether you want to make a change to the allocation process. So unless the city attorney has any concerns, which I don't see him shaking his head, so I don't think it is, it's not unusual. I've seen it in other cities as well.
And then for, maybe Commissioner Guard can answer this, did the commission are they thinking that this would just be sort of a one-time thing, or would this be an ongoing?
So I think one of the questions that we recommended a joint work group address would be whether this should be an ongoing discussion to kind of understand what council's priorities are moving forward on some regular basis. I think we said annual in the question, but.
And then, sorry, I just wanted to add that in terms of the logistics of this meeting body, we discussed having 2 to 3 meetings with the joint subcommittee in November and December.
So we would start meeting immediately? Yeah, okay.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But for a limited time, and I don't think they're talking about making that committee permanent, but just to get to get a more, my understanding of it is to get a smaller group that can sit and talk about the questions that were raised and perhaps focus them in a different way, maybe, or just get more clarity about, and from a committee to have something to present back to the full council. And I would envision perhaps somehow, if we could do it, it's a large group, but a full council commission work session to, bring back whatever the committee does come up with for further discussion and then ultimately action, is my understanding. And I don't think, you're not wanting us really to go through these questions tonight and start answering them from our individual, because I mean, they're very good questions and they deserve more thought. And, I'm not, that's not what we're doing tonight. We're starting this process tonight. Ultimately, it will come back and we'll have a bigger discussion, right?
That's correct. After the joint subcommittees meet, then those recommendations would be presented to the Community Services Commission, which would make the approval and formal recommendation back to council, which would likely be a work session to see what council has feedback on the recommendations, and then moving forward with a formal action with council.
Okay, so, sorry, council questions? Okay, Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for the work on this, and Commissioner Guard for your leadership. Just a question to highlight, and I know we talked about this in the commission meeting and so on, but just sort of for everybody's edification, can one of you guys remind us what the community agency input opportunities are for this process?
Sure. So as part of the interviews that we hold with the agencies during the application review committees, we do ask agencies if there's additional ways that the city can support them, and that's one of the questions on the application as well. And then additionally, this year, we are administering an online survey to the funded agencies to seek feedback on last year's funding process, as well as any input they may have for this year's funding process, as an additional way to gain some insight into how the funded agencies are interacting with this process.
Great, thank you. And then, of course, whatever commission meetings or council meetings happen, those will also have public comment periods as well. Right? Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wahab?
I put my hand down, thank you.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Zermano?
Thank you for the report. Very good. I like the idea. Just one question. Any thought on perhaps inviting one or two members of folks who have continuously, year after year, applied for these funds? I mean, in my mind, they know what the process is. They know what could make it improve. They know what the fallacies are. Was there any thought in that?
So no, we didn't discuss potentially including grantees who have a long history of receiving funds through the process. I will say, though, I think what we are interested in is sort of understanding from a policy perspective how to balance the prioritization of questions like, agencies that have been funded in some cases for a decade or more versus new agencies. And this has always been a little bit of a question, but I think as the oversubscription rate to the funding that's available goes up, it's a much more acute question as to what should that prioritization be.
Okay. I always look to folks like you to help us policymakers make good policy. But there are folks out in the community who can also help out, and that's the reason I brought it up. So thanks again.
Okay, so that's all the questions I see right now from council. So I'm going to open public comment on this item and ask if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment this evening. We don't have too many members of the public, none here in the chambers, and it looks like 2 online, and I don't see hands going up from either of them. So I'm going to go ahead and close public. You're not aware of anyone who wants to make a comment on this, are you, Madam City Clerk? Okay. I'm going to close public comment and go back to council for comments on this. And let me just start out by saying that should we approve this this resolution this evening, which in the form it's in, which is to form a subcommittee with 3 members of the council, that I would also, I think that what I would like to ask council to do is members who are interested in serving on this committee to send a message to the city manager indicating, or let the city manager know in some way that you're interested in serving, so that then from there we could choose the people. But we're not quite there yet, so I just wanted to mention that. So I would appreciate Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. Yeah, so, when I read this, it was different, and I think it's good. And I support it, and, I like the idea. The reason why I asked you the questions I asked is my essential concern is, this has always been a big committee, where there's always been more need than we've had money, and that's the nature of the committee, and it's the nature of this process. And I've over the years I've taken I have been at ease, or I have been at great comfort to see that to some extent we've been able to take out a political dimension to this, right? And and although I know we vote for the recommendations, and we often with very little tweak, with very little tweaks over the in the numbers, we've essentially have gone with the recommendations of the commission. So that's so that's my only concern is what I don't want this to become is, because once you start putting us on there, it becomes political, right? And I understand that we're going to be looking at vision, we're going to be looking at priorities, and sort of ushering or advising or walking with you through this process, keeping an eye not only on vision, priority, and mission, but also giving sort of insight as to what the groupthink up here is, and I get that. So, anyways, that's just my central concern. So, but other than that, I think it's a great idea, and I look forward to the process. And with that, I'll go ahead and move the item.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lamnon, will you second? Okay, so the motion is, the staff recommendation is moved by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Lamnon. Go ahead and speak.
Thank you. I'll just briefly, part of the goal of having this subcommittee was to actually address some of those political tensions that happen. The commission spends all of the time, as you noted, Councilmember Salinas, and then, council gets 10 emails, and suddenly some of that work starts to come into question. And so really, I think, and Commissioner Garg can correct me if I'm wrong in these statements, but the energy to sort of step away from that and really look at it fundamentally as a policy issue, that certainly is the goal. Obviously, keeping in mind political pressures can always happen. So I appreciate the concerns as well. And thank you for moving the item. Thank you again to city staff and to Commissioner Garg and the rest of the commission for the work. Thank you. I'm happy to support the item.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
I had a question about the role differences between Councilmember Lamnon as a liaison versus this subcommittee and the number of council members on this subcommittee. Are we adding 3 additional and having Councilmember Lamnon as part of this, or is it going to be 3 separate council members?
That is a very good question, and I think I would like to start with, just hearing from, having council members who are interested in serving, let the city manager know, and then we can talk about that. And I'll certainly also talk about it with Councilmember Lamnon and probably Ms. Garg, who you are the current chair of the committee. Oh, no, who?
Commissioner Arzo Madavi is the current chair.
Oh, Arzo, okay. So maybe also chatting with her as well. Anyway, I don't know that we have an answer to the, it is something to consider, though. Councilmember Lamnon serves as the liaison to the committee.
But you won't necessarily be there.
Not necessarily, but possibly. So, and
these will be separate meetings, right?
yes, but in choosing the 3 council members, there is the question of, should the liaison be automatically one of these people, or should the liaison not be one of these people, since the liaison is a part of going to the committee meetings or the commission meetings. I'm sorry. So I don't know. I'll ask staff or Ms. Garg, who's representing the.
So as the maker of the motion, let me just explain how I see this. And the seconder and the liaison to the commission can actually have input. I look at, and to answer Councilmember Andrews' question, I look at Councilmember Lamnon's role on the commission as the liaison. That's her role. And if this committee is formed, then we would bring in 2 other council members separate of Councilmember Lamnon.
It's not to duplicate the role of Councilmember Lamnon as the liaison to the commission. It is an ad hoc committee. We will call it an ad hoc committee. It will not be a permanent committee to start to bring back some advice to council about how we do communicate with the committee and how we do, and to answer some of these questions that they've raised about what do we really want them to do, and so that's my. I still think the question is open as to whether the current liaison should be on the committee or not, and I think that's something for some further. You would be passing this resolution tonight. You would be authorizing me.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to
so.
overthink this. I make the motion. And then
Okay.
second step.
All right. We'll go back to. Now I see other council members. Armenio.
I support the motion, and I can give you my top 3 priorities at the very moment. Let's see, I look for Hayward-centric organizations. I look for temporary needs, unaccompanied children coming in, Afghan refugees need some help, and also long-term needs, abuse of our elders, abuse of women, abuse of our children. Those are long-term, they'll never go away, so we need to help them. So temporary, long-term, and then also Hayward-centric. Thank you very much for your good work.
Okay, and Councilmember Andrews, I'm sorry, I think we kind of took your question and had a major discussion, so I wanted to go back to you.
Yeah, it's okay. I was confused because I kind of feel like I understand the request, but I also feel like we're asking for more liaisons to the committee. And just wondering if it was possible if we can do maybe like a planning session, like what we did with the planning commission with the council as an item, or maybe a survey can be produced and we select our priorities to be a survey. I'm just nervous about I'm just nervous about capacity of a lot of the council members and adding another committee. So, I mean, I understand the need of getting clarification, but that's just something that I'm thinking about as we vote on this.
Okay, I think it's an ad hoc committee that has a limited time, a limited role. All those things that you said are things that I think the committee could come back with and say, why don't we do why don't we do this now to get better answers to those questions that they raised? And I'm seeing nods over there that I'm kind of characterizing it the way, yeah. So it's not creating more liaisons to the committee. It's a working group on an ad hoc basis for a temporary period of time to come back to us so we can have a greater discussion of these issues that have been raised, these questions that have been raised.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, thanks. And then Councilmember Wahab?
Thank you. I actually agree with Councilmember Andrews. When I saw this, I really genuinely was having a lot more questions than answers, I guess. And there's a couple of things to consider. Number one, yes, I understand it's an ad hoc thing, but I also think that we select commissioners to trust them, to vet them, and rely on them when they are vetting these nonprofits and these institutions that are coming in for financial support. One, they are the ones that are seeing these presentations. They are the ones that are getting really kind of in the nitty-gritty as to asking these nonprofit groups questions about, how are you doing this? What are you doing? You were paid last year this much, and so forth. We as council members are a little bit more removed in a higher level thinking as to what do we want to see in the city of Hayward, but they see it in a little bit more as to what does this particular nonprofit actually do? How do they service? What is their performance metrics? I think this is a little redundant, to be completely frank with you guys. And I think that the best solution that I can think of is not only a survey or just a response from individual council members, presented by the, from the commission or the staff saying, these are kind of the core concepts that we genuinely see in the city as important and is coming up. Where do you guys feel the most comfortable? 1 through 5. Do you like it a lot? Do you not like it a lot? Whatever the case may be, number one, or even inviting one or two council members that are not necessarily the liaison, just to get their particular feedback, right? I agree with, Councilmember Zermania on, the high level issues that he mentioned. Obviously, we all have our own pet issues, if you will. I just don't think that this is the appropriate design, setup, or situation for this particular commission. That's my 2 cents. I'm not necessarily in support of this.
Okay, I understand, although I don't think you quite have it's not that the people on this committee would be making any recommendations or, decisions or about how funding should be spent. This is more to get a little
feedback.
more, to get feedback in a way.
Mayor, I understand that. However, it's also the chair or the individual commissioners can reach out to us individually, giving us a, hey, this is what's happening. This is what has happened in the past with other commissioners. They have reached out to us individually, met with us, talked to us, explained why this nonprofit, let's say on housing, is going to be funded more this year than it was last year, or even in the report that is given. I just think that it's a little redundant.
Okay, we have had this discussion at times in the past about, overall, a few years ago, I think we kind of set some, so I don't know, I'll have to disagree with Councilmember Wahab on this one. I think this is a very good suggestion that came out of the committee to get this, out of the commission, to get this discussion started so that we get back to a point in, I think it was January, where we can have the whole council involved in this discussion, but in a way that will be, at that time, I think, more meaningful and will give council members more time and more of a framework with which to answer these questions. So I do appreciate the suggestion from the committee, and I'll be supporting the motion. With that, Councilmember Enders, you wanted to add? Go ahead.
I have a friendly amendment.
Sure.
If possible. Can we change the language to up to 3 members? And if we don't reach the 3 members, the council members who opt to be a part of this ad hoc committee can help with a survey to the rest of us, and then the results can be submitted back to the commission.
I think we could do the survey regardless of how many members are on the subcommittee. So I'm not really concerned. I mean, this committee is going to probably be, open to the public. It'll be noticed with an agenda so people can participate. I'm assuming we want the community agencies to be able to listen in on the conversations and provide feedback. So I don't think there's really a Brown Act concern, but I mean, I think up to 3 members is fine if but I think other members can provide input on what kind of questions should be in a survey and email those to me. That can happen at any point.
I don't know. We'll have to see what interest there is, and I don't want to ask for that tonight. I want people to have a chance to think about it and then let the city manager know. If there aren't 3 people volunteering to do this, we may have to make it a smaller number, but let's see what we get if we do pass this resolution. We'll go from there in making the decision. I think the spirit of the amendment is certainly acceptable to me, that if council members don't want to do it, or there are only 2 that want to, maybe we go with that. I hope that doesn't happen, because I think, the commission has reached out here, and I think that we owe it to them to respond to this request. I will say, based on my own experience, I started out my service to the city with my first appointment in 1992, what was then the Citizens Advisory Commission, that pretty much just dealt with block grant funding, CDBG funding. There was another commission, actually, the Human Services Commission, and I don't think the city was putting the kind of money into the kind of city money into it that it is now. But anyway, that changed over the years. A lot has evolved, and things have become very complex. You know, we have to deal with the CDBG, you know, the federal regulations on the use of the CDBG money. Our money is a little looser. We have, as a council, we set priorities and goals. We have a roadmap. And, you know, and so I think this is very timely. We're getting a lot more requests. You answered, one of my questions was, is this just was last year an outlier because of COVID? But I think Ms. Garg had a, you know, pretty good response to that no, it isn't. And she's probably right. And so, anyway, I think this is very timely and I appreciate it. So I'll be supporting the motion. And if there are no further council requests to speak, why don't we go ahead and vote on this motion that was made by Councilmember Salinas and seconded by Councilmember Lamnon. To support the staff recommendation here. And I would, oh, okay, did both the maker and the seconder accept the amendment of up to 3? Okay, that's okay too, so.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnon.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
With amendments, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and I believe that the motion carried with 7 aye votes?
Correct.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, and please give the rest of your, you know, fellow commissioners our thanks for bringing this to us, and we look forward to working with you. All right, that brings us now to council reports and announcements. I'm looking. Whoops. Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I wanted to just acknowledge a group of folks in Hayward who have really done a phenomenal job during the COVID-19 over the last 20 months or so. And they are the promotoras from the Tiburcio Vasquez Health Clinic. And, you know, you know, this group of community members, of neighbors, you know, back in March of 2020, you know, these, you know, this group, a lot of was unknown about the, you know, virus, and a lot was, you know, still, you know, being, you know, all the public health departments from the national, state, local levels, while they were, you know, trying to organize and get good information out to the public. This group of promotoras from Tiburcio Vasquez, you know, they masked up, they put gloves on, they put on PPE, put on masks, and they went out door to door all throughout the city of Hayward, and into some of the lowest income areas of our city, to disseminate information around testing, to disseminate information around the virus itself. And over the last 20 months, they never gave up. You know, their work continued. Even over the summer, while a vaccine was getting developed, they continued to work. And then when a vaccine was developed, you know, they were the first ones in line, you know, to get vaccinated, because they believed that being vaccinated was important. And they also believed that it was also important for some of our most marginalized and lowest income neighbors. And And so they went out and, pivoted strategy from testing to now vaccinating. And bless you. And over the last couple of months, I've had this wonderful opportunity to work with promotores from the Tiburcio Vasquez Health Clinic. And we've been organizing vaccine events particularly in South Hayward. And, I have to say, this group of neighborhood organizers, they are so good that these events have been incredibly successful, and we've been able to vaccinate not only adults, but as we were able to vaccinate kids, we're also able to vaccinate kids. And so I just wanted to acknowledge this group of neighborhood health educators who, just went out there. They are our front line. They are the ones that go out there and knock on doors, door to door, to make sure that our families and their kids have the best information possible and are the healthiest as possible. And so I just wanted to acknowledge them tonight and thank them for their great work. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all have great admiration for them. I know I do. I've gone to a number of the graduations, and I enjoy hearing the stories and seeing them out there with, at events, and it's a great group of people, so thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. I just kind of wanted to bring it up to staff. I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier. With the news talking about inflation significantly, and I know we lifted the eviction moratorium. If you guys can, I'd like an update, if you guys can send it to us via email or myself in particular. Just kind of what are we planning if we do see a huge increase of homelessness, need, things like that, and kind of what are our projections out there looking like just for our community members. So that's something that's been very disturbing. It's been talked about a lot in the news lately, and I just want to make sure that we are kind of covering our bases and just preparing for the future as we don't know what's going to happen. So I just wanted to highlight that, especially during the holidays. And other than that, I do appreciate everybody for all the work that they have done around COVID, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Andrews. Wait a minute. Councilmember Zermano. Then Councilmember Andrews.
Just a bit of good news. Caltrans finally has listened to us. Colleague Andrews and I met with them along with city staff. That was 2 weeks ago. And on November the 9th at 10:30, Caltrans is going to lead a group of folks to clean Tennyson and 880.
Yeah, we should have applause for that announcement. Thank you, Councilmember Andrews and Councilmember Zermano, for whatever you did to make that happen, although I think we'll all believe it when we actually see it.
That is,
what was that date again?
Excuse me?
What?
Oh,
Did you give a date when this is going?
I'm sorry, November 9th.
Okay.
November 9th at 10:30, from 10:30 to 12, they will lead, and they will take care of us, etc., which is, I'm completely amazed. And we also need to thank Assemblymember Bill Quirk, because he also pushed a little bit, along with our colleague from San Leandro, Deborah Cox. So
All right.
a
I will
regional
definitely thank
community
them,
effort. So this is, so you know where I'll be on the 9th at 10:30, cleaning Tennyson and 880. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Now, Councilmember Andrews, who's probably going to share the same good news, right?
Well, I'll piggyback off of that. I was actually going to share the website as well. We did meet with Caltrans. They are looking at plans to partner with the city of Hayward to look at the exits a little bit more. And I also want to extend the invitation for residents to send customer service requests to Caltrans at csr.dot.ca.gov. So if you see that the exits are getting a little bit more debris, then please submit a ticket to Caltrans. They see customer service requests and they look at them Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m. So we should be getting more attention to our exits. Also on the trash talk tip, I also had a great time at Keep Hayward Clean and Green. I want to thank Hayward PD for coming out. I also want to thank maintenance and trees and streets, landscaping and streets for doing a phenomenal job off of Weeks. They installed, I believe, 25 trees around Weeks Park. So I want to thank them tremendously for adding more beauty to that neighborhood. And also want to thank Chabot, I think was there. Maybe it was Chabot. I think it was actually Cal State East Bay. Cal State East Bay for coming out, as well as Mount Eden for coming out and helping us out, along with many of the residents. I believe we had over 100 or something folks coming out. So thank you all for participating and helping clean Hayward. And I look forward to that event on the 9th. I might stop by myself. So that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you, and thank you for your efforts here. And yeah, I have to say, bringing up Keep Hayward Clean and Green made me think that perhaps that earlier item we were discussing, the work session we had on the waste management contract, that would be a good subject for them to address as well. But
I mentioned it, Mayor.
You mentioned it. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands up. I will just say that I want to bring you all greetings from our sister city in Japan, Funabashi. I visited them on Saturday evening through the magic of Zoom. They were having a citywide celebration, but part of that was dedicated to our sister city relationship and celebrating the 35th anniversary of that relationship, which ordinarily 5 years ago, we had a delegation, and I was in it, who went to Funabashi. They would have come here on this fifth, this cycle of the anniversary. Of course, that didn't really seem, that takes a lot of planning, and we were very uncertain about how things would be right now, so they did not come here. But they did celebrate in their own way our sister city relationship. We had and I actually appeared. It was an outdoor thing with a big screen on the stage, and it was so weird to watch my image, to see my image on a big screen in an outdoor setting like that with people. But they did seem to appreciate, other people, former Mayor Sweeney and also Terry Lee from Moreau, who's had an ongoing relationship through the school exchanges. And I believe also Ray Hashimoto, who was one of the founders of that committee, all sent videotaped messages, which they played. And so I just wanted to let you all know that they do send their regards and are thinking of us as we're missing not being able to actually reciprocate the hospitality and entertain them this year, but maybe we can do that some year soon. So with that, if there is no one else, I think we have no referrals, and no adjournments this evening. So with that, until our next meeting, which is next week on November 2nd, we are adjourned.
Recording stopped.